Welcome to the Totally Productive Podcast. This is going to be a short discussion about aliens between Kevin and Phil. Enjoy.
If they're a spacefaring civilization, you would assume that they've visited multiple worlds and they have capacity to visit them without outright dying when they step foot on the planet. So, again, it goes back to if they have visited Earth and they're capable of visiting Earth and they haven't destroyed us the first time they came here, then they might have some type of good intention, and that's the most logical reasoning because they haven't destroyed us. If they could and they didn't, then they might want to teach us, or they might want to study us, or they might want to just look at us. So I think if that's the case, you don't want that.
That's the best.
If aliens are in contact with the human species, do you want all of their understanding of us and all of their communication with us to be through the military? Who's looking at it in terms of, I want to use this technology to make the bigger stick? Do you think that they might possibly start a war inadvertently through their effort to capture their technology and use it for their own? Would you rather have a diplomat be the representative of humanity than a military commander? Those are things to think about, you know?
Yeah, you don't want 100 different people trying to communicate with them, right?
No, you don't. Yeah, you want someone with a cool head, right? Who's not going to inadvertently set off a space conflict, right? Like,
that's a good point.
That's what you want. But
we don't know if we're fighting either.
You don't know if you're fighting. Exactly. Sure, you want military superiority. You want the military to have access to a downed spaceship if we have one. But do you want them to be the only people with access, and you don't want the government to even know about it? I don't think so. I think you want the government to know about it so they can, get more funding for it. They can dictate the priorities of the legislature and create new laws based on what's the most important focus of the day. And knowing about aliens and having access to their technology is probably one of the most important things you could have and that you could vote on as a society, Either way, I think it's a good thing that Congress is creating laws to protect whistleblowers and they're having hearings, because if this technology is real, it's highly likely that the Congress doesn't know about it and it's not being legislated and it's just the wild, wild west. It's whatever the military wants to do with it. So, it's good to get more people to understand it and hopefully share it with the broader scientific community at some point in time, because there's a lot of potential benefit to having technology that redefines our understanding of physics and all of that. Yeah, I mean, it's like X-rays, penicillin, lots of stuff that was made without the intent to make it. It's just other scientists got a hold of it and they followed the research where it was interesting and applicable, and they made good things for the world from it, Chocolate chip cookies, the most important accidental discovery of mankind.
What about Viagra?
Yeah, it's important too.
It was invented for pulmonary edemas, and they found out it gives people raging boners.
Oh God.
Wait, what?
Well, that's usually how medicine works. They invent a medicine, say, okay, what does this do now? And then they find all the effects. That's why medicines all have side effects. It does a list of things.
Yeah.
You just gotta do the whole, is it better for this, with this? Whole calculation, yeah.
But that's the problem with modern medicine, is that you're taking one medicine to counteract another medicine or to amp up another medicine's effects. And it's like an endless cycle. Like, if you just stay healthy through natural means, you don't have to deal with all those side effects that every medicine has.
Well, some of these diseases are natural too.
Yeah, like some medicines.
And you gotta treat it.
You're right. But for example, if you're obese, you have to take medicine to control your blood pressure, and that has effects on XYZ. Whereas if you just eat healthy, now you don't have to be concerned with XYZ or high blood pressure. So medicine is not a cure-all, and in fact, in many cases, it can make other things worse.
Medicine's true purpose is to help out with the quality of life.
I think so. Yeah.
Take these.
Like insulin or pain meds, and then people take it out of whack.
But there's even a lot of medicines that are used not just, well, I guess quality of life, but like, for example, morphine. If you have a very serious injury and they need to operate on you or something like that, or you have side effects after and you need painkillers, it can help you in that moment.
Life care.
Or that it can help you in that moment, but if when you get over that situation, now you're addicted to it, and it's not a quality of life improvement.
Well, it's what's that saying? Like the difference between medicine and poison is dosage.
I guess so.
It's what you use it for and like how you use it, and then of course people are gonna misuse it whether it's intentional or not.
Yeah.
So you can overdose on vitamins.
Gotta watch
I
out.
mean, the water soluble ones you literally just piss out, but the fat soluble they don't leave right away. Oh, so the vitamin, the medium it's transported in is irrelevant. So sometimes they have liquid tabs for fast absorption. They have tablets for slow release. They have chewables. They can give it to you in injection. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever method is best for you or you prefer. So vitamins, you know, you can always get like multivitamins. They come in those tablets like Centrum, or you can get the Flintstones chewable, or you can get the multivitamin gummies. Or they can give you a B vitamin injection sometimes.
And the whole concept of vitamins, if you eat a well-balanced diet, you probably never need to take a vitamin in your life. Unless you have some deficiency, right? But otherwise,
correct,
yeah, vitamins are supplements, and supplements are...
You miss out on the phytochemicals, too, from plants.
Yeah.
You miss out on all that stuff, but...
You miss out on a lot of good stuff, and you miss out on the effects of eating healthy, which are that you're fuller, you know, if you're eating fiber, you can poop better. Like, there are a lot of side effects to eating quality foods that you can't get through a supplement. Or just eating a vitamin.
It's always better to get it from food.
Yeah.
But if you're, like, I don't know, traveling a lot, or if you have a deficiency where you can't eat correctly or dietary restrictions, those kind of, like, cover your bases.
That's true, yeah. Alien food, whatever it is, would look wildly different than our food because they could be like Piccolo. They could live off of air and water, you know? They could never eat.
Photosynthetic.
Yeah. It's very possible. Like, look at how much energy we can harness with a single solar panel on a roof for a day. And if their skin cells could do that, like, yeah, they could have enough energy to function as a living organism, sure. Especially if they were very efficient at capturing that energy. Maybe the sun on their planet gives off more radiation than ours. Maybe they're closer to the sun. Like, they could live off of that. They would have to be really bored or, like, really, really fervent. Because to a point that was brought up earlier, the amount of effort it would take to go, like, these vast distances and carry resources and platoons to invade, would they really do that just on a whim? Like, it would have to be like a do or die situation where their planet was gonna explode and they need a new homeworld to make that type of effort, you know?
That's the point I brought up earlier, is once you learn how to harvest outside of your planet, resources mean nothing. You have almost unlimited resources.
Yeah. But you were talking earlier about the position of Earth in the Milky Way galaxy is very hard to reach. And is it worth your effort just to go over there and start some riffraff with the humans?
That's the other scary thing. What if they're just bored? Space pirates.
But let's assume they can
that would
live,
be wild.
Let's assume they can live and die. Like, they probably would not try to start a war where they have a risk of dying themselves just for fun. Wars usually overpower resources, things like that, you know?
Yeah, we could have space Vikings, man. Like, we're gonna go around and anybody that looks like they can fight us, we're gonna fight them because that's who we are.
Yeah. Are they not afraid of their own mortality? Are they, like, invulnerable? So what is their value system as a society, then?
Strength. It would be strength. We show strength at all costs. And if you're stronger than me, then end me, because that gives me glory, because I didn't show any fear.
Oh, no, that seems possible, but, like, less likely for an intention for an alien race to visit Earth.
Let's hope. Let's hope. Let's hope.
But to me, it goes back to if they visited Earth, and they haven't destroyed us, and they could, it's probably some noble intention, you know?
Allegedly. That's the scary part about it. Is it's just you don't know. You can't calculate it.
I would liken it to, in the world there are different countries, there are different people, there are different groups. They're not all trying to kill each other at all times. Like there's a level of coexistence to where you have your interests, they have theirs. And in the universe and in the galaxy, if there's different forms of life, they're probably not all trying to kill and conquer each other. They're more concerned about getting their energy or their planet. Like
You're thinking about the lens of being a human. These things are not going to be human at all. Completely different paradigms, philosophies, all that.
If they're a species, I think you can safely assume they're interested in their own survival as a species. Not necessarily on the individual level, but as the species level. So like would they go out of their way and risk their own species survival if it doesn't really benefit them? I don't think so. But if they have that type of value system, like they like to kill things for sport, then it would be more of a predator situation where you have like one like, tough.
That's another possibility.
Visiting the planet, but not the whole species trying to take it over. You know what I'm saying? Or good intentions, or not worried intentions.
We're not worth their time. That's the other thing.
In either way, it doesn't seem like threatening intentions, really. So, if there is a whole galaxy of different species, wouldn't you want to ally, create some type of shared group so that if someone comes knocking on your door, you've got another species that can back you up and vice versa? Like, wouldn't you want that?
If they're worth it. Otherwise, what's the point if I could just take everything and set everything up myself?
Well, if they give you the same weapons and they say, let's join a team and let's defend each other, then now you're equal as well, Like,
but why would you give somebody weapons?
There are
They could turn around and get you.
So what if, for example, they could go on planets that were highly carbon-based, and we could go on ones that were highly oxygen-based, or like vice versa, and they wanted us to be able to explore certain worlds or defend certain worlds, and then we would form kind of a shared value and kind of like form a group to defend each other. I think
that would be amazing, but practically speaking, they could just build spaceships or little colony bubbles.
Yeah, sure, that's possible. But I think in this idea that there are multiple species in the galaxy, there would certainly be factions that evolve. Just like the axes of powers and the allied powers, like in the major world wars. They would form cliques, right? That's probably point.
Space World War. It transcends worlds. It's Galaxy War 2.
Yeah. So there's one video I was watching where these people, they were talking about they were talking about the oatmeal, like the one with the guy with the funny hat on it, with like the pilgrim hat.
Oh, the Quaker Oats guy. Yeah.
So anyways, the Quaker Oats European version has like 5 or 6 ingredients. But the US version has like 16. And some of it's like they make it last longer with more preservatives and stuff like that. It's like one of those things where it's like, I don't think that this should have like 16 ingredients.
Right. For Quaker Oats. Should have Quaker Oats and maybe like some flavors in it, but not that much crap.
And this is kind of like wild to think about. That's what you basically get. Another one, it's like kind of like the hamburger thing, where the one that like that's on a display at some museum in Europe because it's like still looks pretty pristine.
Yeah, well, I think the reason you can have a lot healthier food in Europe is that they have laws against what you can put in food. They have strong opinions on the level of chemicals and the type of chemicals that can be in food. And at the end of the day, everyone wants healthy food. Like, everyone wants abundant food and healthy food. No one wants to eat food that's going to make them ill or sick. Yeah, they want it to taste good, but everyone would like both at the same time. Good taste and healthy ingredients inside of it. And I don't think those two things have to be mutually exclusive. You can make good tasting food and make it in a healthy way. And I tried this restaurant recently called Halal Bros, and it's just really good fresh food, and it only has like 4 or 5 ingredients in it. They have like rice and then meats, like 2 or 3 types of veggies, and then like some sauce on it. And it's so good. And it doesn't taste like, if you go to some other places where you can get rice bowls, there's just so many flavors in it. Sometimes even with like Chipotle. Chipotle is healthy food, but they just have so much stuff in it. And I think that, I think in America, we've become accustomed to needing to have so many different flavors when we order a dish. But I really like just simple, flavorful, healthy food. And I think a lot of other countries, that's the norm.
Yeah, like with Chipotle, it's like their stuff is good.
Yeah, it's very good. And Chipotle, don't get me wrong, they're probably one of the better fast food restaurants that you can eat at these days, because it's still like whole foods. And what I mean by that is that it's not a bunch of crazy ingredients that are processed to make kind of like a fake food.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like meat, veggies, rice, that type of stuff. And they have different condiments, but it's all generally pretty healthy and organic and whatnot. But I think still a lot of people have gone away from just the taste of natural, healthy, simple food, and they want it to taste like this kind of artificial way, or this kind of super, super
That's
tasty.
kind of a weird way of thinking about it.
Right, and to me,
the fake taste, you crave the fake taste.
yeah, have you ever had Kraft mac and cheese? There's an example. Kraft mac and cheese, that's not a whole food in any way, shape, or form. It's been... So, first of all, grains...
It has it all. It's pastry and it's cheese. What more can you ask? It's a balanced diet.
Well, I mean, it does have some okay macros in it, I suppose. They inflate, what would naturally be in that food. So, at the end of the day, macaroni is made from grains, right? And so you're already processing it, and you're turning it into enriched white flour, basically, to make the noodles. And so when you're doing that, you're taking away a ton of the nutrients, and you're just taking out the carb part of it, the simple sugar, the simple carbohydrate of it. And so it's processed from the get-go. But then they put in this fake cheese. There's probably some real cheese in it, but they have so many preservatives and additional flavors that have been engineered in labs to make it taste super cheesy. The box says it's the cheesiest, right? but that flavor is not natural cheese, it's enhanced, and it's so many chemicals in it to make it taste that way and look that way.
They should put that
and
on
so,
Skittles and stuff, the sugariest.
Oh yeah. A lot of food manufacturers want to make their food seem healthier than it is because they want to have it both ways. They want
they want to have the bad and the good.
They want people to think it's healthy and really just think it's healthy enough to where they can keep eating it and not feel they need to make a change. Because as a food manufacturer, you want people to keep eating your food, right? So there's a weird kind of, conflict of interest where food manufacturers, a lot of them, unfortunately, are more interested in getting people addicted to their food than they are making a high-quality, nutritious food.
Well, that was like that one documentary I was telling you about with Fed Up, where, when they're advertised, this is low in fat. And what turns out what they do is they just, yes, it's lower in fat than it was before, but then they make up for it in sugar.
Right.
It's so weird to think that they can almost like when you have that create a character thing in some RPG where you have the sliders where you make your head bigger or your hair longer.
Yeah.
They're doing the same thing except with the food where they're just moving the stats over. Oh yeah, 20% more fat or 20% less. And or then 20% or 80% more sugar. And it's just weird to think that they can just slide it like that. But with that Fed Up documentary, that was kind of how basically it was talking about how a lot of different things have a lot more added sugar than what they should have.
Yeah. So I saw that, and they kind of do it both ways. They try to take out things that consumers will perceive as unhealthy and add in things that consumers may perceive as healthy. So they try to take out sugar or take out fat, which can be a good thing. Fat, less so. Fat is a necessary macronutrient. Sugar is not. You can go your life without eating added sugar, and you'll be totally fine. You'll be healthier.
Yeah.
But you can't go your whole life without eating fat. Fat is a macronutrient, and so there's 3 macronutrients: fat, protein, and carbohydrates. And they all do different things in the body, and they're all necessary for a healthy functioning body. But a lot of the times what these food companies are doing is they're adding in things that aren't really making it that much healthier, but they're trying to make the consumer think it's much healthier. So you see this a lot with whole grains.
I see that a lot with the whole non-GMO or like all like it's like this is the green truth or simple organic ingredients or something like that.
Right. And so organic is on the whole healthier than eating fruits or vegetables or meat that's been pumped with a lot of like different chemicals and whatnot. But like organic fried chicken is still fried chicken, So,
yeah, it's still deep fried with all these oils, so that all that stuff is in that breading, and then you still
right.
have all that carb-loaded breading.
And so they add that label of organic to get the consumer to feel that it's healthy enough that, yeah, I'll eat that. It's fine. I can keep eating that all the time. And what I see a lot is with whole grain. And so, going back to one of the macronutrients, carbohydrates, carbs are an important part of a diet because they provide you with energy. But in excess, when you have too many carbs, then that energy gets stored as fat in the body. And so, like, yeah, whole grains are good, but does it mean you can now eat all the carbs you want?
Well, it's kind of like the diet soda thing. Is it's like, oh, this doesn't have 150 calories. Well, I'm not consuming 150 calories anymore. That means I can eat twice that amount or triple that amount because my soda is diet now.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there are, different... Nutrition is not a simple subject. Like, nutrition, honestly, is a complex thing. And there are people that can be healthy on some diets, and people that may not be able to be healthy on that diet. That's because the body, is a complicated thing, and some people's bodies respond differently. But at the end of the day, you do have to follow, general macronutrients and general calorie count to have a healthy ability to process, a balanced diet and be able to process these foods and have it not affect your health. And just by adding in fiber, you're not making that pizza healthy, just because, or Kraft mac and cheese, they always promote their fiber. Well, it was at one point in time categorized as a serving of vegetables to have like a slice of pizza, right? And so
you go to Domino's Pizza and you get your serving of vegetables.
So like you can eat pizza every now and then, and it does include tomato sauce, but you're missing out on a lot of the benefits of eating an actual vegetable, like a piece of broccoli, or a carrot or something like that. Because when you eat that food, one, it's filling you up and it's not giving you a lot of calories. And two, it actually does have fiber, and not like this added refined fiber that's just been crammed in there to make it look healthy. So it does help your digestive system. And probably the most important with fruits and vegetables, you're just getting really good micronutrients. So you need your carbs, fats, and protein, your macros, but micronutrients like your vitamins and different, different nutrients that the body needs to function even better than just being able to survive. You get so many of those by having a balanced diet and eating your fruits and vegetables. And I think what's misleading about like the serving of vegetable or serving of fruit is that if you get it from these like processed foods, you're not eating as healthy compared to if you just ate an apple or you ate a carrot.
That was like one of my friends. He put it really well when it came to the whole apple juice scenario thing. Oh, how do you say like five? Like, would you eat 5 apples or 6 apples?
Oh yeah.
Like, no, like why would? But then that's like what you're having with it, like a glass of apple juice or orange juice, because it's almost like you lose all that fiber and stuff, and
yeah,
you're just drinking all the sugar.
Exactly, and so it kind of comes back to processed foods. I think processing foods makes them more shelf stable, and it allows you to add in these different ingredients, which might make them a little bit healthier. But a lot of the time, when they're processing a food like an apple to make it into apple juice, they're mostly taking out the healthy parts about it and only preserving the unhealthy parts, like the sugary juice. So processing could be, a good thing, but it's been more and more turned into how do we make it last longer so we don't have to, make as many, and we can sell them at a lower price. How do we make it taste better so we can get more people addicted to it? And so that's where I don't like, processed foods. But processing is potentially a good thing because it does lead to abundance.
Extreme thing, because it's like, you shouldn't have unless you're pickling it or you're drying it, kind of like beef jerky. So beef jerky, you have a meat, and then you can flavor it if you want, but basically you dehydrate it to knock out all the moisture and stuff, and then you have this piece of meat that's dry as a bone, but it lasts a really long time. Like you can have it months on months without refrigeration. But with that, you're knocking out all the moisture. But then it's kind of weirder though. Like I guess I'm thinking about bacon, and like with bacon, it's like you can have a piece of bacon be in the fridge for months. Think about it, it's like, it's like that's probably not too good to have like a piece of meat that lasts months, or like bread even. Like that sourdough bread that I get from Target, the best example is just the shelf life. Like I'll go there, and I gotta hit the place up at a certain time, because if I don't, they're gonna have bread that's like gonna expire like the next day. But if I get it at the right time, then it's gonna expire in like 2 days. I mean, still not the best thing I want to deal with, but it's like I'd rather deal with that kind of like pain than have a bread that lasts like 30 years.
So you bring up a good point, which is that preserving food has been a tradition for a long time across many different cultures, right? Most cultures have had some type of like pickling or fermenting preservation method, and so that's a healthier way to do it than putting a bunch of different chemicals in it, and it still makes it shelf stable, and in some cases it makes it preserved for a longer time than putting in chemicals. Like white bread is not preserved through pickling or fermenting. It's just got a lot of like stabilizers in it, chemicals that are put in it to make it last like 2 to 3 weeks. But if you were to pickle some meat or like you said, make some jerky out of it, that'll last long time, or you could can it. And so people have been doing that for a long time. So again, processing in and of itself is not a bad thing, and it can be a good thing. But in the large scale, factory food production that we see today, it's more so a bad thing, because it's putting in a lot of chemicals that it's taking out the good part of the food. It's no longer a whole food. And it's usually taking out the bad part of it and injecting more chemicals into it to make it more shelf stable.
No, I totally agree with that, because it's like you can have these chips or crackers that last months on end, and it's like, I guess I'm thinking about, okay, it's kind of knocked down. Anyways, I'm just thinking about like when I made bread, like homemade bread, and I was like, that stuff didn't last long. I had to eat that pretty fast. And then you have like this bread that you get from the store, and it's like, like I was saying earlier, it's just like, it's a lot longer. But that's like with the canning thing. I remember there was this one story I saw, it was a little while ago, it was a can of food that was found, and it was like, it dated back to like the Napoleon era. Like,
oh wow!
When he was doing his thing, opened it and they ate it. It was still edible. Oh my lord. Anyways, I should have landed that one. But anyways, yeah, so it dated back to the Napoleon era. But it's still edible, like the canned food. Like, yes, you can eat it, but the nutrition factor decreases over time. So
well, sure.
Yeah, so then, like, whereas maybe if you ate it around like a couple months after when it first canned, you probably would have more of that nutrition, but this was over 100 years ago, easy, and then it's like you're not getting anything from that, hardly, but you're still able to eat it.
Yeah, I think there's different things to consider about nutrition. Like, generally speaking, there's macronutrients and micronutrients, and like your body needs macronutrients to function, and it needs micronutrients to function more efficiently and be more healthy. And so there's probably still some protein in that, like 1,000-year-old meat, or however old it was that you were talking about. But it probably did lose a lot of micronutrients. And what I've started to learn about recently is that the way that you cook food or that you store food can actually change the amount of micronutrients in it, vitamins.
Really?
Yeah. And so, for example...
So like plastic versus glass type of thing?
Well, I guess you could make that comparison. Like, they say that when you drink from plastic, you're absorbing some microparticles and whatnot.
Plastics.
Right. But generally speaking, when you cook food, so when you cook food in different ways, some ways are better than others at preserving the micronutrients, the vitamins within it. And so frying food, you're not just adding in oil, but it's also super hot. And I believe it's killing a lot of the nutrients within the food, the micronutrients. Does that mean you want to eat all raw food? No, certainly not.
You don't want to eat it like a vulture or something, or like a tiger catching the gazelle, or a lion catching the gazelle.
Right. So cooking food is still an important thing, but the method that you cook it can preserve more micronutrients, and not even just cooking, but freezing. So if you go to the supermarket and you buy frozen vegetables, a lot of the micronutrients have been killed because it's been frozen. Whereas if you were to eat the unfrozen, just raw vegetables, then you would be getting a lot more micronutrients. When it comes to the cooking part of it, though, if you were to steam your food instead of deep fat fry it, not only would you be having 0 added calories from your cooking method, but you would be keeping a lot of those micronutrients. So it's not as simple as just what you're eating. It's also important to consider how you
store and cook it.
Right. The thing about food, though, is that we're still learning about the nutritional contents of food and what's healthy or what's not healthy. It's an ongoing process. And so there are these different, periods of time where people think something's healthy, and then later on maybe they'll say it's not healthy.
What was that one, the Atkins diet?
Yeah, Atkins, for example. So the Atkins diet, my understanding of it is that it's a very low-carb diet, and you see a lot of
keto.
Yeah, so it was like the early form of it was like keto before keto was popular, right? And so I personally have tried the keto diet, and I found that it was not something I could sustain for the long term, because I just didn't feel very good on it. I immediately in the first week when I was doing it, I had headaches and I had very low energy. Yeah, absolutely, because my body was now no longer able to use carbohydrates to provide energy for me, and it had to adapt to essentially flushing out all the carbs in my body and then producing ketones from eating a lot of fats and drawing on fats in the body to now produce the energy that I need, instead of getting the energy from glucose that was derived from carbohydrates that I would eat. And so that takes several days for your body to basically adapt how it's taking energy from your food and supplying that energy for you. And in those couple days, you feel like crap. You have a headache.
Thanks.
People have, different digestion problems. So keto is honestly, I think keto is kind of like a bit of an extreme diet.
I hate doing the 25 carbs thing, man. That was my balance, 25 grams of carbs. That's hard to do. You're almost eating exclusively just meat or vegetables.
Right. Each person is different, though. And keto originally, it wasn't just some popular way to lose weight originally. It came from a researcher who was helping kids to basically treat the seizures that they had. And the ketogenic diet, yeah, absolutely. Keto was originally invented as a diet. These kids would start to eat a ketogenic diet, and they would have way less seizures. And I'm not quite is familiar with
really,
like
so it was
chemistry of that.
it was to help kids not have. So what was
Yeah.
causing for them not to have the seizures?
I don't recall. And I don't want to say like the wrong medical information, but I know that it originally was researched and
You're not a
recommended
doctor. You're not gonna lose your license, man.
a diet for that purpose. So it would be interesting to look up. But a lot of other people have just kind of adapted it, become popular because, hey, a lot of people like to eat bacon and cheese and sausage, and now you can do that and lose weight. But again, does it come back to a healthy diet? It depends. But remember, health and nutrition are complex things. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And generally speaking, when you take out a very important macronutrient like carbs, your body's going to have some changes. And they may be good, they may be bad changes. But it's not what the body is used to. And so you really have to be careful when you're making drastic changes like that.
Yeah, no crap. But I just didn't know it had the whole no seizure thing for kids. That's really crazy. I guess it's like
Yeah.
I just never really look into the whole thing, like where the origins of the diet is. I just knew about the Atkins because like my grandparents did it for a while and they hated it. And I think my dad did it for a minute too, and he hated it as well. But,
Yeah.
Because I think they're saying they didn't lose it. And then one of my exes, her dad did the Atkins, and he was pissed because he's like saying, "I'm always hungry, I'm not losing any weight." And
Right.
It's kind of crazy just hearing like the origins of some of these things.
Yeah. So I think what keto gets right is that it does help a lot of people to reduce their carbs. And if you get into keto as like a diet community, there's different types of keto. Like you can do strict keto where it's like 25 carbs a day max, like you were saying. And then there's people that do like net carb keto, which is this idea that as long as you eat carbs which are rich in fiber, the grams of fiber are subtracted out of the grams of carbs, and so that's your net carbs that you're actually eating. And I think the idea behind that is that like when you eat more fiber, your body doesn't actually absorb the same insulin or carbs that it does if you were to eat less fiber. So there's like different research you can read up on that. But at the end of the day, like it's good that people in the keto community are recognizing that carbs are kind of the main source of excess weight and a lot of health problems that a lot of people have these days. And so reducing carbs is certainly important, or just not overeating carbs. You know, eat the amount of carbs that are necessary. Well, you can if you want to, but just don't do it every day or with every meal. And that's the problem, is that like carbs are seen as the main side or the main dish. It's in every meal and it's in excess a lot of the time. So it goes back, in my opinion, to macronutrients. Have a balanced meal with balanced amounts of macronutrients and try to get as many micronutrients as you can, because that's just going to make you even healthier.
I know, like when it came to the fat side of things, like I kind of got addicted to it. So one of the things I would do is I would get like bacon and eggs, and what I would do is I'd collect the bacon grease. Well, okay, I'd usually take like 3 strips and I'd cook it, and when I had the grease, I wouldn't throw that away. I would just leave that in the pan, then I would cook my eggs in that. So then my eggs got all that nice bacon grease on it. And to kind of like go on that a little bit further, like I felt a lot more full. Like I felt full. Okay, so like the best example I give was, so when I had like brisket, the brisket has a lot of fat in it. And like I could have this like 5 ounces of brisket and I'll feel like pretty good, like I'm stuffed. But then if I had like 5 ounces of chicken, I'll still maybe be hungry a little bit later. But then I found out if I cooked it a little, like put a little bit of fat on it, like just like maybe just a little bit of olive oil or something, it made me feel a little bit better. Like I wouldn't feel full later. I mean, hungry later.
Yeah. Well, so fat is very satiating. It fills you up. Not quite as much as protein, and it does provide more calories than protein, so you have to be careful with adding in fats. But fat is very helpful for the body and the brain. Also, fats help your brain to function. And in terms of calories, like the reason we need need to eat 2,000 calories a day, roughly. A lot of those calories go to the brain. The brain takes up the most calories to function of any organ in the body, because it's doing so much, and it's always on. A lot of organs are always on, like your heart, right?
But the brain... Oh my god. But the brain is much more so.
The brain is performing so many complex actions, and so the heart does like one thing repeatedly, right?
Yeah.
And so, like from a metabolism perspective, it's kind of more predictable. It doesn't require as many calories, but the brain is like processing information, storing information, directing literally every other part of the body, telling it what it should do. It's sensing stimuli and responding to stimuli. You know, there's so many parts that researchers are still studying about the brain, but yeah, like you can look it up, but it's some crazy amount of your total calories just goes keeping your brain running. And fats are helpful for your brain, for a healthy brain. So this is why I personally don't recommend cutting out any of the 3 macronutrients entirely. I think, you might up some or lower some depending on your health and fitness goals, but all 3 of them are important to different aspects of a healthy body.
That's like something like kind of like going to that whole fat side thing, or like the brain. That was like when I was looking up the whole brain stuff. I remember seeing this one thing where, okay, so the amount of energy your brain takes is like almost like equivalent to a light bulb, like lighting up. And at first it doesn't sound like that impressive, but then when you think about how the name of the game when it comes to how a body functions is like doing something in an environment using as little energy as possible.
Right.
It's like if your brain is like gets more and more efficient, uses less energy, then that's less food that you got to use to maintain that brain.
Right. Well, that's what the body always wants to do. The body wants to be efficient, and it is very efficient for all of the complex things that it does. But you need to fuel your body for it to work properly, And there are some people that have different needs and they need to fuel differently. But on the whole, you're kind of still looking at the same 3 macronutrients that every person needs to function well. And so it's important to kind of look at your food as like, yeah, I want it to taste good, but I also, it's putting fuel in my body. If I want my body to work well, and even my mind, because we were just talking about how many calories it uses, you need to fuel it well.
Yeah, you can't be running on like low to no food. Makes me think of those like some of those people that they barely eat anything and just like so they can lose weight. But it's like you're kind of like cutting yourself on both sides, because if you go into starvation mode, then your body starts to eat the muscle first and it uses the fat last.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. But there are kind of like, I feel like a lot of the time what these like short-term diets are trying to do is trying to hack the system, the metabolic system. And so in the long term, it's healthier just to have a balanced diet with balanced macros, in my opinion. But there are certain things you can add in to any diet to kind of amplify your results. And one of them that I think is a little bit healthier than trying to cut out different macros would be intermittent fasting. Because I've also done that.
Yeah, that's where you like wait like 8 hours or something like that.
Right. And so there's different types of intermittent fasting. I think the most popular one is probably like the 8-16, which basically says that like 16 hours a day you won't eat any food, you'll just drink water, and then during an 8-hour window you'll eat food. And to be honest, that's like not that big of a challenge to do, to just eat during 8 hours of a day. And so what you're doing then is you're basically limiting the amount of time that your body has this surplus of calories, and you're extending the amount of time that it has a deficit. And so it's just burning more calories during that deficit period. But intermittent fasting has a bunch of like health benefits, a bunch of research. It can be good for your skin. It can be good for, clearing different toxins in your body. Your body overall will kind of react differently when you have, some fasting periods. But it's a little bit healthier because it's getting you to be more intentional about when you're eating. instead of just eating all the time, because a lot of the time people are eating when they're not really hungry.
Yeah,
They're
eating
really
junk food and stuff like that.
right, and you know, I'm not like the perfect healthy eater out there. And there are times when I'll eat like a bag of Doritos because I just feel tired at the end of the day. But the more that you can be aware of why you're eating what you're eating, and when you're eating it, and try to make sure you're not just eating something because you're tired or something like that, you'll become healthier from that. And I think intermittent fasting, it teaches you some discipline that will be helpful for a healthy diet overall. So that you eat when you're hungry or when you need the fuel, not just because you're
Yeah,
bored.
just because you just to eat, basically.
Right. And that's not an easy thing to do, you know, because eating is a communal thing, and it's also an entertainment thing. You should enjoy eating, you definitely should. But it's just too easy to overeat when it's like for reasons other than, you know,
Like
putting
popcorn,
the food.
Doritos, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, those things actually, those are kind of like engineered to get you to eat a lot of them. And so they have this concept in food production. I think they talked about it in like a documentary. It was like Holy Chicken or something like that Adam Spurlock guy.
Oh, yeah, the one where he's like, he made the fast food restaurant.
Right.
Chicken.
Yeah, so they have this concept in food industry called the bliss point. And so the bliss point, I believe it was like it's like the right balance of like sugars and salts and things like that to where you just want to keep eating, you know, like you don't feel sick, but you want to keep eating something. And so if you're selling food, you know, that's your goal really, is to get someone to keep eating more food. If that's what your profit goals are, just selling as many foods as possible. So chips are one of those things that have like really dialed in bliss point, because like it's basically just carbs and salt and flavor, and it doesn't fill your body up at all, but the taste of it is so good that you keep wanting to eat more and more and more.
Well,
and it's designed to be like that. It's not by mistake, it's by design.
Now, I will say there was an outlier. I had these, one thing, they were like protein crisps or something like that. They basically looked like cheese balls, but it was like, those things, you can eat a few of those, and those felt like pretty good. And it was really, you know, something really good. Yeah. But I mean, it was designed to be like that. It wasn't like it wasn't just like some like Doritos type thing or something like that. It's meant to fill you up.
Yeah.
Versus like this other one where it's like it's meant to make you like plow through it like it's like there's nobody's business or something like that.
Yep, and that's healthier than a bag of Doritos, because you're getting, you know, arguably you're getting like a more important and healthy macronutrient, because you might not be eating enough protein through your normal diet. If you eat protein chips, you'll get more protein. Carbs, you might be eating too many carbs, so it's better to swap out. For a lot of people, it's better to swap out Doritos with protein chips. But you still need to, you know, be aware of what you're eating and why you're eating it, and not just eat stuff all the time. Eat it for the purpose that it's helping you with for your body, you know?
Yeah, well, that was like on the Dorito side of things. I remember there was this one, I don't know if you guys have Sprouts over there, but there was this, this kind of goes with the price, and this kind of segues into the whole price and feeling full. So Sprouts has this one brand, it's not their brand of Doritos, but it's a brand of Doritos from a different company, and the price of it is like the same as a regular bag of Doritos, but it has like way less like fake ingredients inside it, and the taste of it is so good, and it actually feels like a real tortilla shell that they fried up. Kind of like when you you make your own homemade fried tortilla chips and you just cut them up and just fry them in the pan. That's like like the texture wise was kind of like that, but yeah, it was like really good. I'm like thinking, dang, it's just like for like the same price, making me feel a little bit better, and then it's like kind of reminds me of like just doing it homemade. It's like I'm getting something like a better deal. Like it's like I don't know. It makes me think about when you're saying like we almost like program ourselves to have like, oh, this doesn't taste like regular Doritos, so I can't like it now.
Right.
So I have like all that highly processed nonsense.
Yeah, I think when you do like a little bit of a detox on the processed food, you can actually taste food and enjoy food more. Because if you eat Doritos, you're just kind of like bombarded with all these salts and sugars and artificial ingredients, and it tastes really good. Don't get me wrong. Like Doritos, they're awesome. They're probably one of my favorite chips. But are they a healthy chip? Not at all.
No, not at all. Like, that's like also kind of like, I guess for me, it kind of goes back to like some of those. I guess for me, I'm always like hunting for like the best taste of food, like something that's healthy and tasty at the same time. So when I found that, I'm just like, dang, this is like the same price as a bag of Dorito chips, and it tastes better because like I used to be like a Doritos connoisseur, like because I was eating those things like a fiend as a kid. And, I forgot. And I stopped eating them for a long time because they changed something with it. I think they started using some more concentrated cheese thing. It just tasted kind of off. And I stopped eating it, and every once in a while I'll crave it, but it's just like, it just sucks. It's like when they changed that flavor, so then when I found that thing at Sprouts, I was like, dang, this is good. It's like, it just kind of brought me back to the glory days where it's like, this actually tastes like nacho cheese.
Yeah, and it's good to have some junk foods that you like every now and then. If you do it when, you know, you're strategic about when you eat it, it's a good thing. Like today I was working on my garage all day long and it was hot out. And so I just wanted to have like some quick sources of energy to replace my carbs that I was burning. And so I got a box of wild berry Pop-Tarts. And so I don't eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast every day, but today when I was working basically in the 100+ degree weather for 10 hours, that seemed like the amount of carbs that I was getting from the Pop-Tarts was a little bit better matched to my energy expenditure compared to if I just woke up and I was gonna roll out of bed and eat 4 Pop-Tarts. I'm then in an energy surplus. But if I'm having a few Pop-Tarts during a 10-hour workday in the heat, you know, I'm burning through those.
Yeah, it's different. Like when you eat that stuff, like after all that hard work, all that effort you put in, it's like, yeah, some food just hits differently.
And so if I were working outside every day, and thankfully I don't have to.
Yeah, no crap.
But if I were doing that, I still probably wouldn't eat Pop-Tarts every day. I would eat some healthier foods.
You want to have like an emergency standby, like you pulled out like a holstered gun, like Wild West.
No, I mean Pop-Tarts are good, but I can't eat those every day. It's not super healthy. But in certain situations, it goes back to macros. Like depending on your needs, you can increase or decrease certain things. And if you look into ultra distance runners, so ultra marathons are like marathon, basically longer than a marathon.
Yeah, it's like 36 miles, right, for a marathon.
Marathon is 26.2.
Oh, 26, dang it. I knew it was a 6.
But ultra marathons are usually like 50 miles plus. So like crazy distance, right? Like super, super difficult. And I really am impressed by those people that do that. But if you look into what they eat, you know, they train on very healthy foods. But during the race, during these like 50-mile plus races, a lot of them will actually, like you were talking about, they'll like stuff, not Pop-Tarts, but they'll stuff like cheeseburgers, slices of pizza, French fries.
Oh, they carry that on their ultra marathon?
They carry that and they eat that during their ultra marathon because just like me eating a Pop-Tart in the garage when I'm working in the garage all day, it's a quick source of energy that the body is able to quickly break down and process and turn into energy. And so for an ultra marathon, that's exactly what you want. You don't want as many of your calories or your energy in your body to go to breaking down the food. You want all of the energy to just be taken out of the food and let your body focus on what it needs to do, which is run the 50-mile race, and then just get some easy energy to keep doing what it needs to do.
I just didn't know that. I didn't know they carried the food with them. That's wild. But then again,
Well-
I guess it was kind of like that one video you sent me of those people doing that Tour de France where they would get those drinks and stuff. I mean, get it. I know something they were making out the best choices with the wines and stuff.
Oh yeah.
They were getting like almost like a refuel, like a checkpoint thing for their race.
Yeah. Yeah, you should link that video or like show it picture in picture or something,
Oh yeah, I'm
because that was
definitely gonna do that.
that was a really interesting video that I saw as well. So, but that was, I believe, like many decades ago, and I think the comments in that video, they were saying that, you know, there was less, like a little bit less science and like precision and strictness with the diets of athletes back then. But at the same time, like what is still true about athletes today and back then is that athletes require more calories than the average person just going about their day. They need calories. And so you saw back in the Olympics, like I think it was like 2008 or something like that, 2012, they had this news segment on Michael Phelps's diet.
Yeah, it was like
and they showed like
something like that.
Something like that. Did you see that segment on like here's what Michael Phelps eats in a day?
I remember he had like he had so many large pizzas or something like that. I
Yeah,
remember it was
so
like 20,000 calories. I know it was like over 10,000 easy.
Yeah, so they showed like here's what he eats in a day, and they put all the food on a table, and it was like 2 large pizzas, and then like 3 pounds of spaghetti,
God
and
dang.
like 12 eggs or something crazy like that. It's like, is that the actual food that he eats? I don't think so.
No,
I
I
think
don't
he's
think so
a little bit healthier than that. But does he eat a bunch of carbs? Heck yes, he does, because he needs to, because he's swimming for 8 hours a day, you know, at a very fast pace. So again, no macro is bad for your body by itself. You know, it depends if you have medical conditions like you know, certain types of diabetes where you really have to be careful of your carbs. Then yes, certainly some carbs can be bad for you. But in general, if you don't have a medical condition that dictates otherwise, having a balanced diet with balanced macronutrients can be a good thing. And then if you do work out more, you can increase that, you know? Michael Phelps would not be a, like, however many time Olympian he is, best swimmer in the world, if he didn't have carbs. Like, he just could not compete at that level without carbs for what he does. There are some really great athletes that do keto and whatnot. Like some in some sports, it might be more practical than others. For example, ultra marathons. There are some people that do keto for that, and that's because they're actually training their body to burn the fat in their body, which is a little bit more of like a long-term energy source, and they don't have to keep shoving all these carbs in their body because they can just more efficiently burn the fat that's in their own body, and they won't get through all of that in one race. So it can be helpful in some situations, but for most like dynamic sports, like fast, intense, short burst type sports and whatnot, carbs are very important, and most Olympic athletes eat a bunch of carbs. So carbs are not terrible. They're not the enemy. It's all about balancing what you eat. And,
It's not
and
the
when,
devil.
Carbs are not bad, and it's
Kind of like
unfortunate.
Waterboy, remember? Is this like electricity is the devil? I invented electricity.
Oh, Waterboy. I remember that
Carbs
movie.
are the devil. I can imagine like Baba Boucher. Carbs are the devil.
Yeah. And so do you remember in when we were growing up in the 90s, do you remember that they
I was
had...
born in the 80s, man. I don't know the 90s.
Oh, you were 80s, really?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. I'm like, what? But they had kind of like a big time in the 80s when Atkins was getting more popular, like 80s and 90s, when they were saying like, you know, fat. Well, Atkins was more like embracing fat, but there was also like another diet period where people were saying fat was bad, and so during that period, unfortunately, they said, like, don't eat any fat. Fat is bad for you. Fat turns into fat, which is just not true biologically. Like, the food that you eat are providing calories, no matter what food. And if you eat excess calories, then that gets turned into fat. But eating fat doesn't add fat to your body. It doesn't work that way. But during this period, that's kind of like what people were thinking was like, if you eat fat, you'll be unhealthy and you'll become fat. And so what did they do instead? They picked the other macronutrient that was more calorie dense than fat, which was carbs. And so they're like, yeah, eat a bunch of carbs instead of fat. And guess what happened? No surprise. People got fat. Like, because if you're going to eat an egg, you know, which I think is like maybe like roughly half proteins and fats, or like predominantly proteins and fats, no carbs at least, you're going to feel pretty full because both the protein and the fat are filling you up, and they're both doing their thing from macronutrient perspective, fueling your body. But if you replace that one egg with a bagel, you're going to have to eat like a whole bagel, like double the size of food, certainly double the triple, quadruple the calories to get the same level of feeling full. So fats I don't think should be cut out from your diet entirely.
Oh, no, yeah, not at all.
And that's what happened during that period, because everyone was like, yeah, fats are bad. Fats turn into fat, so let's all eat carbs instead.
You gotta have the fats.
Yeah, and so that whole push to eliminate fat was kind of, I think, the reason that our diets are so carb heavy right now, because they started to make a lot of different foods and really push carbs being, if you look at the My Diet plate, or like, you know, different recommendations for how much of each macro you should have, it's usually like overwhelmingly carbs. Carbs are like the biggest slice of that pie, right? The biggest part of that plate. And I think that came from people's, you know, previous push to get rid of fat. And I don't think fat in itself is actually a bad thing. You just need to avoid the bad fats and have a balanced diet overall.
Well, it probably didn't help with the oil stuff too, though, because like back in like when McDonald's was first a restaurant, well, when they first started around the 70s or whatever, they were using animal fat to fry their food.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There was a doctor who done this huge push because he was claiming that there was more heart attacks happening with the animal fats. And so then, you know, some heart doctor back in the 70s or 80s, I kind of looked it up, but basically he was like saying, yeah, you don't want to use animal fat because it's going to give you more likely to give you a heart attack. So then there was a push for vegetable fats, and you know, more, and it's like, I can't remember, it's like palm or something, or canola, but went to vegetable oil, and vegetable oil is supposedly, now like with the research on it, is supposedly less healthy because of the smoke point on it, and how it reacts when it gets, like how your body reacts when it's like, oh crap, I gotta look it up. It was just really interesting, because it was like,
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of these fast food places, these ones that when they were first forming, they used animal fats. And then there was a push for vegetable fats. Now most of these fried places, they're probably going to be using vegetable fats. Because what you fry it with is also kind of important too, because we're talking about putting the oil inside your chicken and stuff, but the type of oil, kind of like how you're saying the whole putting it in a container and stuff. It's like where it's like you don't want a plastic that's going to leach into your food. Now the oil, it's like you're not going to fry your, you know, stuff in some kind of like crappy oil, I guess is the best way of putting it. But that's why I'm trying to push more for using animal fats.
Miles is not a fan of animal fat.
No, he's not. That's why I got the duck fat and then the beef lard. That's why with that brisket that I was making, I saved the fat that I trimmed, and then I'm gonna like, you know, boil it, basically get some tallow from it.
That's a good point. Miles, what do you think about, you know, nutrition, foods? Are there certain foods you think are good to eat or you don't like to eat?
Listen, man, everything I eat is fried. Everything I eat comes from a restaurant.
Everything?
Just about.
Dang, like what do you usually eat?
You're for a good time, not a long one, you know what I'm saying?
What?
Restaurants are definitely tasty, but that's expensive, bro. That's the reason I'm
You're
at
looking
that
at
one.
minimum like $10 a meal.
Oh, yeah.
If you're having that,
I never said I was the smartest man.
You got good taste, though. Sounds like it. What are your favorite restaurants to go to?
Number one, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah? What do you like
Yeah.
at Chick-fil-A?
The spicy chicken sandwich. It's just
That's a
so good.
one.
Dang.
McDonald's is a spicy chicken sandwich is pretty good too.
You brought up an interesting point, Miles. Like, why do you eat the chicken sandwich? Is it just taste, or do you feel like it's a healthier choice than, say, a burger?
Oh no, it's not for health. It's strictly flavor.
Okay.
That's the same way I do it. Is it's like when I go fast food, I don't do it for health. I do it for taste.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty reasonable then, if you ask me. But I feel like a lot of the people that go to restaurants like Chick-fil-A, they go there because like a part of them thinks it's healthier to eat a fried chicken sandwich than a burger.
Oh
But
no,
if
I just
you're-
can't cook.
And maybe it's like not wanting to cook either or things like that. But I think that's where it's tricky these days is these restaurants, they kind of make themselves look healthy when, you know, it might not be actually healthy. And so if you were to ask me, like, what's healthier, I would say like an In-N-Out burger because it's not going to be fried in oil and it's got pretty much like fresh ingredients and more vegetables are loaded up on that thing than a Chick-fil-A sandwich. So just look at what's in the food and judge it based on that in terms of how healthy it is. That's what I'd say.
So Chick-fil-A uses MSG in their cooking, which I didn't know that until somewhat recently. But on the other front, though, I tried it because I found out what oil they use. So they use peanut oil to fry their food. So,
Okay. In-N-Out uses that for their fries, I believe.
Peanut oil is pretty good. I like the taste of it. It definitely gives it a pretty distinct flavor that I like over just vegetable fat or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, Chick-fil-A is tasty. I just know whenever I drive by there, they have like a line wrapped around the building twice.
Same. Every
Always.
store. I don't
Like-
know why it is. Chick-fil-A is like busier than all heck.
Well, what
They
I
always
think,
get you out quickly though.
True.
Yeah.
True.
like they're friendly. They provide good food. I think part of it though is like people think fried chicken is somehow a healthier option than other fast food because it's chicken, you know. And so again, it's just like that's not how it works. Like it's based on what's in the food, not what you add in or take out. It's based on what the majority of the food is. And if the majority of the food is fried bread crust with a bunch of oil in it, like that's not going to be a healthy food at the end of the day, you know?
No, yeah, not at all. Because it's like you have that oil. That oil's not like sugar. It's not like water. It's
Right.
It has all that oil inside that can go in your arteries, and then you add that to the food. It's just like, I don't know. It'd be like one of those like fun like experiments. Will spinach or lettuce be healthy if you fry it? Well, you're frying it because you're adding all that oil to it, so probably not.
Yeah. I
I mean,
always...
is it better than like frying a fat piece of bread? Yeah. But
Right?
you're still frying it.
I always kind of giggle a little bit when I see like different fried vegetables, and you see that at like a lot of places around where I live, like fried okra,
Fried pickles.
I've seen fried corn, yeah, fried pickles, and it's like it's like that pizza thing you were talking about earlier. Like it's like, okay, there's my serving of vegetables, but is it really? Is it really what they had in mind when they recommended
Probably
4
not.
servings of vegetables a day? No, not at all.
It has all the food table elements, you know. It has your meats, it has your vegetables, it has your fruits,
Yeah, I suppose so.
it has your grains.
It has your grains, yeah.
It has like the whole food pyramid, man. I couldn't believe that a whole vegetable thing happened, but that kind of like that whole Morgan Spurlock thing when he made his own fast food place, where he would put grill marks on the chicken, like it was still fried or something, but he still put grill marks on it to make it look healthier.
Well, like, what was interesting about that movie, I believe you're talking about, like, Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken, was that his whole premise was he was going to do all the things that fast food companies do, and just they don't tell you about, but he was going to tell people about it. His restaurant had, like, all the crazy things they do to the food put up as posters on the wall. And so they're doing that. When you go buy a grilled chicken sandwich from, name a fast food place, a lot of the time they're putting that food coloring on it to make it look like it's grilled, and there's no way it's grilled.
Oh, that's like the
So-
fish in restaurants, or I mean, stores where it's like they make it look like inject some pink coloring into it.
Oh man, yeah,
Sure.
right. So there's a lot of stuff that restaurants do, and they're not doing it because it's gonna make the food healthier. They're doing it because one, it's gonna taste better, and two, they're gonna make you think it's healthier. So you feel better about eating it all the time. And that's kind of manipulative and sneaky, and I don't like that.
Well, another thing, that's like something else that's kind of interesting. It kind of goes with the whole chicken thing. So,
Yeah.
FDA regulations, they have to like not put antibiotics inside the chicken and stuff. But I guess the point I'm bringing up this is like, so if you go to the grocery store and you try and buy chicken, they'll advertise no antibiotics. Like it's like this huge thing, like they're doing you a service, when really
Yeah.
it's just a regulation they have to abide by anyways.
Yeah, antibiotics I don't know enough about to give like a smart opinion on. I think the idea of antibiotics is good, because what you're doing is you're basically preventing other diseases from entering the food supply. But I know a big issue with antibiotics overall, even for people, is that when you use them in excess, the bacteria you're trying to kill become more resistant, and they no longer work as well.
Well, I guess my point in bringing it up is not against the antibiotics per se, because I know some also advertise no growth hormone. And,
Yeah.
And I guess my point in bringing it up is that they're almost advertising like the bare minimum. Like bare minimum, the FDA requires them to have the no growth hormones or the antibiotics and stuff. And it's just like, then they put
Right.
it on like this advertising thing. It'd almost be like kind of like with the FDA when it comes to the packaged foods you get. There's so many parts per million of certain things that, like roach,
Yeah.
and, like contaminants. There's like parts per million that is allowable.
That's
so
right.
that would be like you get a can
Yeah.
of SpaghettiOs or a bag of like you get some cereal and Captain Crunch, and it says like now 50% less rat parts or 2% less rat parts or something like that. It'd be like it's like almost like advertising the bare minimum of what they have to do in order to sell it on the market. Well, that's kind of like also too. I'm starting to notice it more now because of California, but some of these products too will say like, oh, this one has like red dye X, like some 35 or something like that. Then I also see stuff like, oh, like the California like regulations as far as like disclosures on what's in the food.
Yeah, you know, when those first started to become a thing, when California was passing a bunch of those laws, like I know a lot of people were like making fun of it essentially and be like, oh man, everything causes cancer, you can't buy anything. California's like freaking out. But I think it's a good thing what they're doing at the end of the day, because it doesn't hurt to provide people information that this thing you're buying has chemicals in it that have been shown to be linked to cancer. It just doesn't hurt, and like let the person choose if they want to buy that or not.
Yeah.
But on the
exactly.
flip side, if you don't know it, you could be exposing yourself and you wouldn't want to. So when I was painting my garage, I learned recently that different paints give off different chemicals that can be more hazardous to your health and potentially cause cancer. And so I didn't even know that at first. And so now that I knew it, I figured out, yeah, I'd rather buy a paint that has less of those. They're called VOCs. Basically like volatile organic compounds.
Yeah.
And because I'm going to be painting in the garage for several days at a time.
Do you leave the door
And I'm
closed
gonna
or
be-
open?
No, I left it open, and that's like what they recommend. But I just don't want to take that risk if I don't have to. The paint is going to look the same. It's really not that different to me. So I'd rather choose the healthier alternative. And so for food, where it's something you're eating every day, multiple times a day, why are we not getting these disclaimers about what's in the food and what illnesses that can cause or conditions that can cause, you know?
No, I totally agree, because with some of that, it has to be disclosed because you got to know what's in it. Because it'll be like, well, I mean, because I know right now it's just they do have the ingredients on it, but there's something that could be hazardous from it. I'd like to know. I mean, crap. I mean, you have it with drugs. I mean, there's that where basically you know, what's the likelihood. Well, not likelihood, I guess, but you know that there's a risk of it causing certain health effects. So to me, the way I look at it, that's not too much different than when you take drugs. Like the prescription drugs where basically it says like, you know, this my likelihood of seizures or heart attack and all this stuff. But it's like, why not the same with food? Like this could cause
Yeah.
you dizziness. This cause,
Yeah.
um, and then also it's on alcohol too. Like do not drink or drive. You know, drink responsibly and all this stuff. And like they have disclosures for pregnancy and stuff like that on there.
Yeah.
And it's like I
Exactly.
don't see any difference with that than just like a regular, like whether it be a candy bar or something like that. If you have a candy bar that can give you cancer, well, crap. I want to know if this candy bar can give me cancer. I want to know if it's I just like if I want to know if it can do this bad thing.
So the thing about cancer, I'm not a doctor. I don't know about cancer from like a research level, but as a consumer, like being exposed to these different things in the news and seeing these different warnings, my take on it is that there's just a bunch of stuff that can cause cancer, you know?
Yeah,
And
carcinogens.
so, right, carcinogens are in many different situations and many different products. And so as a consumer, like I just want to limit my exposure when it's practical and when it's possible. So it goes back to being informed. I'd rather be informed and know about these potential issues and then choose what's worth it, what's not worth it. Instead of just being like, yeah, I'm going to absorb all the carcinogens. I'm going to just like throw caution to the wind. You know, you just got to be a little bit smarter than that.
Well, that's kind of the candle stuff, like those scented candles. I
Yeah.
don't know if you use those, but that's something you might want to look into too, because of it being scented and stuff.
Yeah.
And then people are burning it inside their houses.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like you're burning that oil or that, because they use those different chemicals to give it that scent. And it's like
Yeah.
you're burning that, like you have people that are burning that crap in their homes.
Right. Yeah, and again, I think cancer, just like nutrition, it's a complex subject. There are many different variables to consider, but it's only going to be helpful to be informed about what is known to be linked to cancer and allow you to choose what you want to do, you know?
Well, even if it's like not all that's linked to cancer, just at least know what the hell you're putting into your body to know
Yeah.
like what's going to be in it, because it's kind of like the gluten and peanuts and all that other stuff. I mean, people don't bat an eye with the peanuts or that stuff because people have allergies to that, so it's important to know what's in it so that
Right.
they don't have that allergic reaction. At least they'll know the risk if they do try to eat it.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point.
It's like knowledge
So
is
I
power with
definitely-
this. It's like if they can if they can put
Yeah.
a big fancy logo of like Captain Crunch on the box, I think they'll have enough room to put like this might cause XY health effect, or this was made with this
Yeah.
ingredient that people might be allergic to.
And I think what it comes down to, like to look at it at a higher level, is that a lot of the unhealthy foods are like economically more viable right now for businesses because they're more shelf stable, they're cheaper ingredients, they're easier to produce, and so they don't really want to say those bad things about them because at the end of the day, a lot of businesses want to sell that product. They don't want to sell healthy food that takes longer to produce and is more expensive to make.
Well, then also not
That's the
not
problem,
worry about
you know?
having to throw out the stock every like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like, not have to worry about throwing out like something that I guess they'd like to know they can keep it there for almost like a couple more weeks than just a couple of days.
hmm And I think that's something that as a society we can do better. I think we can make healthier food. We can provide healthier options. Even if we can't do that overnight, we can at least label what's in the current options better to know what you're choosing. And I think that would cause a lot of people to choose better foods already, you know?
Yeah, but then it has to be labeled on it.
Right.
Kind of makes me think of ramen. Like, I love ramen noodles, and I always thought ramen pretty much lasted forever, like packaged ramen. And I found out recently not really. Like, almost every package of ramen noodles I ever get, like, I'll look at the label, and it'll be like, I mean, granted, it's still a long while, but they'll say like 4 months will be like, and then it'll expire. And I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
dang! I was like, I thought ramen noodles pretty much were like one of those foods you can, you can basically put in a time capsule for 200 years and it'd still be edible. Well, at least not that crazy, but at least for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Not at 4 months.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about preserved food like that. I think when it was first invented, ramen, like instant ramen, was actually like a very positive thing for society because it allowed a lot of people to have like cheap, abundant food that otherwise wouldn't have food. They would be kind of like food scarce in their household. And so that's a really good thing. Like it helped a lot of people to have
Miles lives off
food.
ramen.
But now we have this problem in modern day society where it's no longer hard to get food. Like you can get food. The challenge is getting healthy food at a reasonable price.
Well, it's like the bread. Okay, well, I guess a good example is that sourdough bread I get from Target. It's like, yeah, $3.29 a loaf or something like that. And,
Right.
But I could get the regular white bread from Walmart that's going to last like a week and a half or something like that, like a week. Like, because, like I said, the sourdough bread, that's like 3 days and I got to, like, eat that thing, like, max. But then the bread from Walmart, it's like a week later I can eat that. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I'm getting it for like $1. I made like $1.50.
Yeah, but it's kind of like pay now or pay later, you know.
Yo, that's
If you're going to choose the $1 meal every day for 20 years. I mean, I don't want to say it's a choice because for some people it's not, unfortunately, and that's just what they can afford.
Get what they can get.
And so I'm not one to be like on my high horse and be like, why are you eating white bread? If that's like what you can afford and that's what's around, then eat what you can, you know. And I have
Exactly.
no bad feelings about that. People should be able to eat food and not feel guilty about what they're able to afford. But I also wish they could have better options. And there are a bunch of people in America that they really only have access to like convenience stores and things like that.
Food deserts.
Food deserts, yeah. And that's the bigger issue is that as a society, we're not providing healthier options for people in general. And I wish we were, because I'm sure they would choose it. I'm sure there are lots of people that are just like, this is all I have money for, but I would like to eat healthier food, you know?
Yeah, that's just insane to think about. I kind of forgot about the whole food desert thing. It's like, I remember there was one video I was seeing, I forgot where it was at. It was some city somewhere, and I forgot how far they said the nearest grocery store was, but it was like, I think like 15 miles. And then it was like one of those things that's like, that doesn't sound too bad, but if you don't have a car, that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to get the groceries. But yeah, like I said, so then it's like the whole food desert thing. It's just like I said, they were talking, like they said the nearest place to them, like where they can get the food or stuff like that, was like, was like this local convenience store. And then you look at the options they had, it's like, they had nothing. It was just, I mean, granted, it's a convenience store. I get it. I totally get it. They're not supposed to have like a whole like chicken breast there, but it's like one of those things like you don't really have that many choices, and it's gonna be all this like super preserved food that's high sodium and all this other stuff, and it's like,
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Like if you don't have access to that, like I guess the best way of picking it is, or saying is having access to like getting chicken breast and all this other stuff, and you can only get ramen. It's like, yeah, your diet's not going to be too good if you can only get that junk food, basically.
Yeah. So to sum it up about food, I don't think that any specific macronutrient is bad. It's about moderation, and foods these days, when you walk into the supermarket, a lot of what you see is processed in a way where they're taking out the good parts about it and they're only leaving in the bad parts. So if you can, the best advice I've heard about a supermarket is like try to avoid everything in the middle, because that's like all the shelf stable processed stuff, or just be very, selective about that stuff. And then try to shop on the outsides, which is where, like the meat and the dairy and the vegetables and fruits and the whole foods essentially are. And not everyone will have access to the same types of supermarkets or financial resources to buy healthy food because unfortunately it's more expensive. And so I think overall we need to do, as a society, we need to make that food more abundant and more available.
I think another good policy is like if you can't pronounce it, it's probably something you shouldn't put in your body.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's exactly what you should put in your body.
I mean, like
Anything you can't pronounce?
for food, there on the whole, like a lot of preservatives and chemicals are like that. But like medicines and things like that, like, you know,
Yeah,
food,
but food, I shouldn't have like, I mean, I guess if you have like bread, you know, it shouldn't have like 30 other different ingredients unless it's some type of like, I don't know, fancy bread or something like that. I just don't. Yeah, like if you can't pronounce the name of the crazy ingredient, it's probably something you shouldn't be throwing in the body.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb for sure for looking at ingredients on food. But you just gotta do your best as a consumer and look for the healthier options. The truth is out there as far as what's in all this processed
Where
food.
am I going?
Like an X-Files thing right there.
The truth is out there. It's up to you to find the food that you consume. PSA from the Totally Productive Podcast. But anyways, back to the net. I think now on a more random side note, it's a lot more lighthearted. What's the best fried chicken? And well, not fried chicken, but like the chicken sandwich. Like, like Chick-fil-A. You know, yeah. Now all of them have Popeyes, KFC.
Oh my god.
Well, obviously Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, even Whataburger has one. I think Wendy's has a
Whataburger has fried... Oh, are you talking sandwiches?
chicken sandwich, yeah.
Okay, yeah. To be totally honest, I'm not a big fan of fried chicken. It's just everywhere here in Texas. It's alright, like don't get me wrong, but it's not like my favorite food or anything. And so I would say, like I'm probably not the best resource to go to on fried chicken. But I like fried chicken that's not like where you don't taste mainly the oil. You should taste mainly the chicken. And it should be light, you know, a little bit fluffy, breaded. Got a crunch to it. So we have this place nearby us called Golden Chick, and that's pretty good. I've also had Raising Cane's, and that's pretty good too. But to me, like, honestly, fried chicken, it all tastes pretty similar. And so I don't get why we have like 5 billion fried chicken restaurants.
You gotta have variety, you know?
But there, I guess what I should clarify is I don't get why some people are like staunchly opposed to or supporting these specific fried chicken restaurants. In terms of taste, like there's no fried chicken standout restaurant for me. And none that are like terrible, because they all just taste pretty similar to me.
For me, I guess like Chick-fil-A I think has one of the better ones. Popeyes has a pretty good chicken sandwich, and then I would put like McDonald's and Whataburger next. So like Chick-fil-A at the top, or possibly contender with Popeyes. But
yeah,
for chicken sandwiches, I'm not saying getting the fried chicken, but just the chicken sandwiches.
I guess like the one reason I might choose another fried chicken place over another in terms of like the food itself would be like the quality of chicken. And so they have like rib meat. Like if you get chicken nuggets, I don't know if you're even going to count that as fried chicken or not.
Well,
But
I mean,
chicken
if it's like the McDonald's where they make into a paste, like a white paste, I wouldn't count it.
Yeah, like that type of deal. But there's a lot of other like chicken products, especially chicken sandwiches that basically use the same stuff, the same cuts of meat as chicken nuggets. And so I feel like that's not as tasty and not as healthy as like an actual whole piece of chicken, like a chicken breast or something like that. So I would choose like the chicken where I can actually tell this is a piece of chicken over chicken that's been mashed up and kind of ground up a lot.
Blended chicken.
Exactly. I don't want my chicken blended. Not for me.
You want it blended, not stirred?
Yeah, none of the above, actually. Do you know how in Elf, where he's talking about the food groups, and for him, the food groups are like, it's like syrup, candy, sugar, and like more syrup or something like
You're
that?
saying Alf?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Elf, in that movie.
Wait, Alf, like the little Muppet?
Elf. Elf.
I should enunciate Elf. Elf.
Oh, who? Oh my God! One with Will Ferrell.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
The
Nah, Johnny Depp.
I was about to say Colin Farrell, but I knew that'd be wrong.
Yeah. So like earlier I was saying like I don't think there's any bad macronutrients, which is true, but like sugar is kind of like the one exception that I would say, because technically sugary foods would fall under carbs as the macro, but it's a very simple carbohydrate, and it very easily turns into excess energy and excess fat in your body, and it spikes your blood insulin, your blood sugar level, which causes many other problems. So the one thing that I would say like people should really try to avoid, and honestly never eat, would be candy. Like candy is just pure sugar mostly. It's like above 70% sugar for most candies. And it has no redeeming quality from a nutritional standpoint, at least none that I can think of. So I would say just try to avoid candy at all.
So no Skittles.
Honestly, like, I don't know if there's anyone listening that like loves Skittles or works for like the Skittles company, but like Skittles are not good for you, and it's just
Well, not only that,
like,
then they have the whole die number 99 or whatever.
yeah, and I think it's kind of unfortunate actually that kids are like brought up on candy, and it becomes something that it's like, oh, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna eat candy. Because candy is just like one of the worst things you can eat. It's just gonna spike your blood sugar, which can cause so many other problems. It's gonna turn into fat, it's gonna rot your teeth. Like everything your parents told you about not eating too much candy, it's true. There's just no nutritional
Then you find
benefit from
razors in
eating
your
candy.
candy too, so you gotta worry about that.
Well, that is honestly pretty scary to think about, but so is candy when you think about it. Like, don't eat candy. That's my advice. Very rarely. Like, when you go to the movie theaters, maybe, but try not to eat it.
That's like why I get like every once in a while I'll get Airheads. Like
Yeah.
that'll be something but there for a minute though, I used to be a fiend with the dark chocolate M&Ms. Like I'd eat the chocolate M&Ms, then they rolled out dark chocolate M&Ms.
Yeah.
And I just grew addicted to that. Then Whole Foods, they have these where you can buy the chocolate chips that you would throw in like cookies or something like that. And
Oh,
they
wow.
had a dark chocolate chip one. I was like, oh my god. And I was like
Yeah.
so glad they had that because that was such a good taste.
Yeah.
Not healthy though, because they have all the sugar, but it was like that was a good.
Yeah. Like, things like dark chocolate, they can be healthy, but on the whole, candy, like any candy you get from the checkout of any like retail store or convenience store, it's not good for you.
It reminds me when I was working at Smoothie King. There was this one smoothie that we made. It was some type of peanut butter concoction, and it was one of their most sweet drinks that they had. And if you threw a scoop of chocolate of peanut butter in it, it made it taste so good. But
Yeah.
the thing was like it was over 1,000 calories though. Once you added that peanut butter scoop in there, but it was so tasty. So, not that I was never really successful in doing this, but we were always told to upsell people on drinks. But anyways, I'd tell them like, oh, what you should do is you should get this drink and throw a scoop of peanut butter. It's extra, but it's so good. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
no one took the bite, but it was just like, I didn't feel too bad when I was suggesting that.
Yeah. So there's different types of fats. I think we mentioned that earlier. Like, there's trans fat, saturated fat, and then there's like the good
Mono.
fat, like monosaturated or unsaturated, yeah. And then there's the good fats like omega-3 fatty acids, and different types of like fats that are like found in healthy foods. And so nuts can be a good source of fats. I believe the processed peanut butters tend to have more of like the saturated fat, which is less healthy. But I think what it comes down to is like try to get all your macros from whole foods, because then it's going to be a lot of the time the healthier version or a balanced amount of ingredients. Versus if you get processed foods, they're just going to take out all the good stuff and leave in the unhealthy stuff.
You just made me think about the whole peanut butter thing. Now when I think about it now, It's like, this made me want to make some puppy chow or muddy buddies. It's like, that stuff is so good.
What's that?
Muddy buddies or puppy chow? Oh my god, dude, you gotta have it. It's like a, okay, so you take Chex cereal, and basically, okay, so first you get a bowl, and you put chocolate and peanut butter in it, and butter, and you mix them. Yeah, and you heat them up. So then you try to whip them up together, be smooth, and then what you do is you get Chex cereal in another bowl, and you pour that basically liquid
sugar.
Yeah, it's basically liquid sugar. Perfect example. That is literally what it is. It's basically liquid sugar. Because it's like peanut butter, chocolate chips, and butter mixed together to basically liquid. Pour it on the Chex cereal. And then what you do is you take powdered sugar and then and then you kind of like powder that on that chocolate concoction, cereal.
Yeah.
And it's called Muddy Buddies, but I like calling it Puppy Chow because people are like, why?
Dude,
like, what's
I'm
Puppy
not
Chow?
sure.
The Puppy Chow name is a lot more fun to say.
Because it's getting close to my bedtime, and that's the other key to success, healthy living, is sleeping. Sleeping, drinking water, and eating well. There you go.
I wouldn't mind to Goku again, but you literally made everyone a kid, like everyone.
Yeah.
I will say this: no one asked for GT 2.0.
That is fair. And here's a point that I made earlier.
And I'll tell you this, Phil. You can't defend the show, especially when Navita and I've been watching it since we were 4 years old, 5 years old.
Well,
we've been 25 years invested into this.
Have you been watching the original Dragon Ball since you're 5 years old?
I watched all of it. I've watched every single Dragon Ball. I've played every single game. I've read every spin-off manga. Navita and I are invested. I have invested.
I haven't watched it as long, but I've seen Dragon Ball, I've seen Dragon Ball Z, and I've seen Dragon Ball Super, and I liked them all for different reasons.
Did you watch GT?
I didn't watch GT.
Then watch GT first, and then explain to us how you feel after that.
So I got you. But here's my point about this new show, Dragon Ball Daima. Like, yes, they're all kids. Does that immediately mean that the story is going to be terrible? No, in my opinion, because most of the great arcs in Dragon Ball Z were about a kid, Gohan, or like a young adult, because did you know Trunks.
But did you know Akira Toriyama wanted to get the show away from Goku and go to Gohan?
Yeah, I understand that.
And it did not do very well, so then he went back to Goku.
Yeah, Goku has always been like the central character that other characters have grown from their interactions with Goku.
And Akira Toriyama hates Vegeta as a character. He wish he can just kill him off, but he can't do it.
So
he hates Vegeta.
Yeah.
I agree with him there. I'm kidding.
When Daima comes out, one thing for sure. It's going to be different. It's going to be original. Look at what's happening right now with like Dragon Ball Battle of the Gods. That was a movie, and then it was in the anime, and now they're putting out another version of the movie. Isn't it better to have like some fresh original content from the main creator of Dragon Ball than these production companies rehashing the same thing over and over and over again? And so Dragon Ball Daima could be exactly like that. You won't know until you watch it.
The problem with Dino is you have Bobbity back, and people are like, but he died.
Well, everyone has died in Dragon Ball. That's like, you can bring them back. You know?
But Bobbity, no one liked Bobbity. It's like, it's like really, it's like Emperor Pilaf. It's like you brought Pilaf back again. Everyone's like, can these guys just go away? That's like Naveed's tired of Pilaf.
Oh man.
Yeah. But that's
Pilaf isn't canon, is it? Let's go like Junior. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then it was supposed to end after the Cell Saga, but then Akira Toriyama added more chapters for Buu. So they were gonna make Z no matter what. It's just the Buu Saga was iffy, but Akira Toriyama made it, and then
I get that.
Yeah.
But like, there's a clear distinction from when you go from Dragon Ball to Z. And the distinction is it's getting more serious, it's getting more focused on fighting and power levels. Mm-hmm. Dragon Ball was a comedy. It was a comedy adventure. It was based on like this ancient Chinese story of like the Monkey King.
Early episodes were, but then they got steadily more serious as like.
But they were still always an adventure show with like a lot of gags. Way more gags and adventure than Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z is like, let's travel to the land to fight this guy. But Dragon Ball's this original series is like a winding adventure encountering many new friends and heroes and enemies. But no, Dragon Ball Z, it's like, boom, this evil guy showed up on Earth and it's time to fight him. Like that's a very different story already, you know?
Yeah. And that's what I loved about it is the fact that Dragon Ball has its own thing and Z had its own thing, and it fit perfectly.
Right.
It fit perfectly, but like it's sort of hard for me at least for them to go back to Dragon Ball. Like I get Super was perfect because they mixed it up, but then after like, it's like going to puberty, right? Like you do things as a kid that you don't do when you're an adult. You know, when you're an adult. But imagine going back into being a kid again. Like it's like. Yeah. You're not gonna be. It's not gonna be the same because you're older now, and it's like it's not the same. So they're probably appealing to more kids.
Can you watch the original Dragon Ball and still enjoy it, or
definitely.
You only want to watch Dragon Ball Z? That's my question.
Okay, I prefer Z, but I watch Dragon Ball all the time. But I don't want them. The thing I'm upset is they're going back to something like that they don't need to go back to. They could just keep it with Super. Super did, as much as I hate it, they meshed everything perfectly, and I feel like now they're just going to the Dragon Ball era, which I don't know why they're doing that, but I prefer the mixing.
It could be.
Here's a question for you.
Because if you watch the fan review, every fan was upset. You didn't hear anyone cheer. Everyone was like, "What is this?"
Well, that's not true. I watched the official trailer, and like most of the comments I saw were
did you watch the
middle
live
of
reaction?
the road where like it's different. I want to check it out.
Did you watch the live reaction? Like people, like at Comic or at New York, whatever thing, they're like in the crowd, like they're like mumbling, like, "What is this? Like, we don't want this."
Well, because it's probably not what they were expecting.
Yeah,
right?
no one was expecting this, and then when there was leaks of it coming out, people were like, "Please don't let this be true."
Well, I get you. I really do.
Well,
I think
the way I look at it is that Dragon Ball GT had some good ideas like Super Saiyan 4 and stuff like that, but I think it wasn't executed properly. And Toriyama, I think this is his way of liking the idea where they go to different planets and doing these little adventures. Kind of like, doing these adventures kind of like how in the old show. Because look at the whole Broly thing. We had technically 3 Broly movies in the Dragon. I know they're not DBZ canon, but there was 3, Broly movies, and he liked that character so much. Then there was like this movie made, and people loved it. And with the animation, the animation was so good, but but they rehashed that. I mean, they brought back an old character. So then when I'm looking at this whole kid saga, it's like I think that's not to say that like I've watched the trailer and I'm okay with it. But I think it's kind of like that. I think it's kind of like Toriyama trying to take a stab at this old idea that wasn't executed right. Because the only thing that, if I remember correctly, Toriyama really only pinned, like he done the character designs. So
yep, he only did the character designs.
Yeah, so the designs, all that you could thank Toriyama for. But as far as the story, if anyone hates it or whatever, how it played out, I mean, he's not the guy.
Usually in like, if you take a step back in media, when there's a long-running series, at first, if the creator shakes things up, everyone gets upset, everyone gets worried about the future of the series. And then later on, they kind of look back and they say, most of the time, well, that was good, that helped the series move forward. So you could look at it for different video games, different series. As long as it's the original creator making a twist or a change, it usually works out pretty well. When it doesn't work out well, is when someone that had nothing to do with the series at all buys it and then changes it radically, then it doesn't work out well. But you're talking about the creator of Dragon Ball changing up his creation, which he's done throughout the history of the creation. So I don't think it's going to be a bad series. I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be not what people expected. But I think if you go in with an open mind, you're going to see it's going to be a lot of fun, like Dragon Ball was.
It's going to depend on the fan base, because this happened with the original Gundam series. Because Gundam is different series. It's not.
Char, not Char. Damn it. What's
Char and Amuro.
People didn't like the main series?
No. So the creator of the original Gundam, because there's different spin-offs.
Well, I'm talking about the main line, the UC timeline.
Yes. He created a new series called Gundam Age, and Gundam. It was so bad it flopped. I mean, like as a Gundam enthusiast, I couldn't finish it because it was so bad. And the studio says, "We know this is your creation, but you're no longer able to write your own show." and that because the fans were so mad, as in like it's like George Lucas.
So bad.
Just the whole story, the animation, the characters. I mean, like it wasn't. It was Gundam, but it was like basically like almost like GT. It was like a retelling. It's like no fan wanted a retelling. We wanted a continuation, and he was given 3 tries by the studio because he's the creator of the show, but he doesn't have the funding. So he created 3 different shows. They gave him 3 tries, and all 3 shows flopped. And they basically say, "Hey, you are the founder of the series. We love you, but you're no longer allowed to lead projects anymore." So the creator of Gundam is no longer able to make his own shows.
Dang.
Because he messed up 3 times, and he was given 150 episodes, 50 episodes for one series, 50 for another, and 50 for a third. And I watched all 3 of them, and I can say they're the worst in the series. And this is the creator of Gundam, like the guy that made it what it is. The original series he made was fantastic. The other ones were great. Then he just stopped doing it because he just took a break, and he's like, "All right, I want to retell my story. Let me retell you my story, everyone." And everyone's like, "We hate it. We hate it even more. Stop! You're killing your own show. Stop it." So I hope Akira Toriyama doesn't do the same.
Well, I think the difference between Gundam to a certain extent than like Dragon Ball is that Dragon Ball's been the same storyline for 40 years practically.
Yeah.
God dang. Okay, so I'm just gonna
50 years.
Yeah, Gundam's a long time too because that started in like 77, I think, right?
79.
Dang it. Anyways, it started a long time ago in 79, and the UC timeline, that's called the Universal Saga or something, Universal Century.
Universal Century.
Yeah, and that one was tight. Like they had this whole 2-year war, and then some of the other stuff set after it was like, the Earth Federation won, but then a lot of the stuff after was kind of like post-war, where there's still a lot of like ill will between the space colonies and the Earth people. And it was awesome. It was cool, and it was still pretty tight, pretty neat. But then they went crazy with all the different iterations. It's like they had like this Gundam fighting thing that was like Gundam Tekken. That's just the best way I can explain. It's like no, actually, sorry,
G Gundam. It was G Gundam.
Golden Finger. But it was kind of like Dragon Ball Z if you put people with mecha.
That was the best series of all. Nobody liked it.
I liked it. Then they had like Gundam Seed, and then they had some
Gundam Seed was the retelling of the Universal Century, but in modern.
Yeah, and then they had a couple of other different ones. Like one that was like a post-apocalyptic Earth Gundam. Then they had another one
Gundam X.
Maybe that was it. Yeah, I only know briefly because I've been only focusing on the UC timeline right now. But then they had one where they had like little toys. Like
that one's actually a fun one. You know what's funny? It actually kind of reminds me of the new Dragon Ball coming out because everyone's like, "What is this?" And it actually did really well. The Build Fighter series.
Yeah. You can be surprised. You can be
I actually like the Build Fighter series.
And then surprised when you actually watch it.
I was actually really surprised too. So maybe Phil's onto something, but I'm just saying.
Apprehension.
When you have the manga in a good space right now, and everyone wants to see it so bad live, it hurts when you don't do it.
Well, I think too, it's like the potential of a series. It's like I think because I know we were talking about this before. When it comes to TV series or video games, it's like when it takes a left turn or something, it's like the potential of the series. You know that there's so much to explore. It was kind of like Resistance: Fall of Man. Like I love that game.
Oh man.
First and second one, like the second one, I had a little bit of apprehension because of how they handle some things, but
they same here.
Some cool ideas because the Chimera have been on Earth before, and there was some alien race that wiped them out before, and it was this other alien race, and that
wasn't the Cloven.
Yeah, and then nothing happened with the Cloven, and that was
they never talked about it.
And it was so interesting because it was like this subgroup that got infected with the Chimera virus, but they never fully turned. And they were hostile to both sides, and they were especially hostile to the Chimera, but they were doing their own thing. So it was like this third faction that was like just doing their own thing, like just unbothered by the whole war, while the humans are barely surviving, but the Cloven are just chilling, just taking what they want. Like it's just like, oh yeah, you guys are having a war? We're cool with that. But it's just, but then kind of going back to Dragon Ball, it's just like it just sucks when you see, I guess. For me, seeing them turning into kids again, I won't lie. When I first saw that, I'm just like, okay, what's the gimmick now? Like, it's just kind of, maybe it's because I'm so used to it, or like kind of the stuff they do, kind of like the Tournament of Power, where freaking Master Roshi got to the level of fighting these guys who are all maybe above Frieza level, when we've never seen him train, and the only thing I'm talking about anime only right now. The only thing that we have is that Goku, like, he gets possessed somehow by some lady, and basically Goku's like kind of spars with him just a little bit. He's like, "Oh my god, Master Roshi's been doing all this hidden training." I'm like, it's like really. I'm just like sitting there like, really, like this is the best we got. Like he's doing this hidden training.
So one of the great points I saw, like from another comment on the release trailer for Daima, was like this will really help with the pacing of Dragon Ball, because pretty much from Z, the pacing of Dragon Ball has been, okay, we're gonna fight the strongest person in our area, and now the strongest person in the world, and now the strongest person in the solar system, and now the strongest person in the universe. And it's like, where do you go from there ultimately? Like it's a pretty tiring and kind of like boring way to raise the stakes, is just say like, now there's someone stronger in the multiverse, and now there's someone stronger in all of history. But what they're doing with Daima is I think what they're doing is they're resetting the character's power level so that it's now actually dangerous and actually risky to fight other people. And that could be really refreshing, you know, to see them have battles where stuff is actually on the line. Because you've pretty much known since, like, the Frieza arc that, like, wow, Goku's now the strongest and he's going to find someone stronger, and now it's going to be just expected that he'll win. But I think they could go a lot of different directions by resetting their power levels completely.
I think the only problem with that, though, is that they've always had the potential to having, like, dangerous situations that are not necessarily like, I can blow up more planets than you. Like, the best example I can ever think of, and it goes straight to Dragon Ball. There was this one character, and I think it was the Fortune Baba saga, and it's where Goku faces this one guy as like this devil man guy. He looks like a bat, wings or something like that. He has this ray power where basically if he zaps someone with it, if they have any evil in their hearts, they'll blow up. And that was like something that's like, that wasn't a power scale issue. That wasn't like, no matter what, apparently, because Goku was supposed to be super strong, but, you know, he got zapped with it and nothing happened to him. But, you know, that was just something where that character had this magical power that made him extremely dangerous. And kind of like there's another one. That's a character that could pretty much probably beat everyone in the, you know, probably not Beerus, but anyone up, you know, who just had evil in their hearts, like Frieza, not Broly, because Broly was good, technically. But then it's like, it goes back to then another one. There's this carrot guy, it's this rabbit, and if he touched you, you turned into a carrot. And, you know, I get it's a gag character in a sense, but, you know, it's like, if he can touch someone and they turn into a carrot, that's a pretty nasty power. Like, it's kind of like One Punch Man, where supposedly his power is like, no matter, you know, he can kill anything with one punch. It's like, you know, those are like, I get they're kind of gimmicky, kind of like powers, but still kind of like a power in and of itself. Because, I mean, saying, downplaying Cell or Boo or even Moro towards the end, you had all these characters that can regenerate their bodies, and they didn't seem to have any kind of like, I guess, drawback to that. Even when their whole body gets blown apart, they're just like, nah, I'm good. Like, you know, they just reform just as normal.
Right. Well, in Dragon Ball, the original series, there were so many unique traits like that. In Dragon Ball Z, there really weren't that many unique traits. It was usually like, they're just super strong, or they're invincible, or they can absorb you and steal your powers. So
honestly,
nothing unique, right?
Yeah, I disagree with that. Like
Ginyu Squad, though, Ginyu Squad, they had two characters that had unique powers. So Captain Ginyu could switch bodies, and then that Gui, what was his name? The little guy who could freeze time.
Guldo.
Guldo. G. Yeah. And he could freeze time, and then Ginyu. Oh yeah, I guess both of them have G names. But yeah, Ginyu could switch bodies, and Guldo can stop time.
Yeah, like there were some, right? But if you were to look at like all of the enemies that the Z fighters fought, and you were to take percentages, like most of the percent of those fighters, those enemies would be pretty much like just super strong or invincible for those encounters. But if you look at Super and the original Dragon Ball, like every fighter has some unique power almost, for the most part. Like there's a lot of variety. And I think that's something that makes it interesting, is that you have different people and they have to change their fighting tactic to fight those people. But Dragon Ball Z, Like there was not really like let's look at Frieza, Cell, Boo. Like what were the things that killed them? Pretty much just some form of an energy attack, right? Like so it's kind of more boring, honestly, to see that type of fight compared to like you have to figure out how to deal with this time freezing ability or avoid their poison jab or like do some unique fighting maneuver that you're not used to. I feel like that's pushing the characters forward more than just do a stronger Kamehameha.
I disagree with that. I personally, I thought Dragon Ball for me was more. I watched all of Dragon Ball, but I don't think Dragon Ball is just too much kid friendly. If you're the type of person that loves like adventure, kid friendly stuff, then maybe Dragon Ball. But Z was so much more intense. The transformations, the artwork, I think Z just blows Dragon Ball and Super out of the park. Like it's like the first show that came to the United States was Z. And Z was more popular, and Z is the reason why Dragon Ball came to the United States too, because Z was so popular with the kids that they brought Dragon Ball over too, and then GT. So without Z being
over here first, though.
No, it didn't. No. The Ocean dub brought Z over. So Z was a part of Savin, and Savin Ocean dub.
Dub too, though.
Well, no, it was dubbed after Dragon Ball Z was successful. So Dragon Ball Z came first, right? It was dubbed by Ocean Dub, and it was part of Savin, the same people that made Power Rangers, right? They brought Z over, and then because Z was so popular, they're eventually going to bring Dragon Ball over too. Then they brought Dragon Ball. The Dragon Ball actually aired in the US later than Dragon Ball Z, and then after that, GT was aired. But in Japan, yeah, Dragon Ball was first, and then Z was second. But I just think Z is just way better in my opinion because it's more intense. It's more like for adults. Like I just like Dragon Ball is more if you're like the adventure type thing, then it's cool. But it lacks that seriousness, which I enjoyed with Z and with Super. That's why Z will always be for me my favorite. I prefer it. You know, I still like Super, and I do like Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is good too, but I think like the flagship show when people talk about Dragon Ball, like the flagship show has always been Z. It's always been Z. Like no one says Dragon Ball. They say Dragon Ball Z. In my opinion, like Z is everyone remembers. It's more iconic. Yeah.
But here's the question with that.
Goku with the little red pole.
Yeah, the Super Saiyan. I mean, that's like the best transformation in all of anime. That Super Saiyan transformation is probably the best transformation of any anime show. I think. Like imagine Goku turning Super Saiyan.
Here's the question with that. Can you keep the same trajectory of Z for 40 years? Doesn't that get a little bit boring? Like
I agree. It does, and that's why I think I was glad when they ended it. I wanted them to actually end it after the Cell saga, which is what Akira Toriyama wanted. He did not want any more Dragon Ball after Cell. Fans wanted more Dragon Ball Z, which is why he added the Boo. But I think they should have like put the nail in the coffin and after the Gohan killed Cell. That would have been perfect. I think that would have put the nail in the coffin. You would have Dragon Ball and then you have that Z era. And then everything else now, like it's just doesn't feel the same. Like, I like the Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball ending, But Super did a good job of combining the both, as much as I didn't enjoy it as much, but it had a good combination. But I think I don't. For me, I personally wouldn't want it. Just my preference. I wouldn't want them to go back to the Dragon Ball type scenario. I enjoyed. I watched Dragon Ball. I thought it was good, but I just don't want to go back into that. It's just for me, I didn't enjoy it. I prefer Z, man. Like Z to me is I don't watch anime, but I love Z, man. Like I'm a huge Z fan.
I love Z too, and I think the issue with Super was that it didn't know what it was wanting to do, and it's kind of hard when you have these characters that you have the Super Saiyan God and all this other stuff that's going down. You got to have villains that somehow or characters that can oppose them that are doing this like Super Saiyan God power, and that's what kind of makes it kind of feel weird too. Like when you have people like Jiren and these other characters who are not some of them are trained by the gods, but some of them are not, and yet they're contending with these people that have like supposedly this god chi stuff, and I think that kind of makes it kind of weird. But then the other thing that if they were to bring Super back that they need to explore, or at least it felt like they didn't spend enough time exploring, was the whole multiversal aspect. And for me, that's what I thought was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, you have these angels, you have these gods of destructions, and then you have this guy who's like everyone's afraid of him, and he can basically decimate universes with no issue. Like destroying them versus erasing them is like a total different ball game. Blowing them up versus erasing them. And then we didn't really get that. The only hint that we got that there was something even bigger was Jiren was talking about how his mentor got killed by somebody, and because of what they were, he couldn't bring back his mentor because I don't know if they were a demon or whatever, but they couldn't bring them back. And I guess that was the thing that I wish they kind of built on more, where it's like, oh, okay, well, if they have these angels and this other stuff, does that mean that there's like an opposite faction? Because what's the point of the gods of destruction? Because they seem to take their jobs pretty seriously, or there's certain rules that they seem to really abide by, or something like that. And we just don't really see anything more than that. Than, I don't know, Vegeta having a binky, or I'm trying to think of some other thing, like a random future Trunks saga thing that didn't really, in a grand scheme of things, didn't really go anywhere. Because like, why did Zamasu go to a whole different alternate reality or different timeline to do his grand plan? You'd think he would do that in the main timeline that he's in already. I think that's the other issue too, is like they had all these cool ideas, but then it's like they do almost everything but that, because it's like, why did we need another future Trunks thing? Because like his story like, ended perfectly. Like it couldn't have ended any better than that. You know, first his timeline was shredded, then he goes back in the past, hopefully save everything, and then he ends up going back to his own timeline once everything's fixed in the main timeline, and then he basically ends his saga. The androids are done, Cell is done, and now his Earth can at least have some type of peaceful ending, somewhat, compared to what all happened.
Well, one of the things that you said earlier, Naveed, was like, for you, peak Dragon Ball was pretty much Saiyan Saga through Cell Saga, right?
Yes.
And so, like, I agree. Those are probably like some of the best sagas for me. Also, like, I love those. But that's like 4 or 5 years of TV right there. And so, like, if you're a Dragon Ball fan, and there's many of them around the world, how do you continue Dragon Ball? Do you said you wanted to stop watching after Boo, right? Like you wanted it to be done. But then how do you keep making stuff in the Dragon Ball universe, and how do you make it feel fresh? You know, you have to change things up. You can't, like, if you just continually had a new, stronger person arrive on Earth and they fight that person, and they wait for the next person to arrive on Earth, like, that would get really boring. So you have to switch things up, you know?
I know. I'm okay with that. I prefer they didn't do anything. I would have been okay if they would have ended it after that, like, completely. But I get it. If they have to bring the show back, they have to change it up. And Super did a good job. I thought Super did a. I know I give it a lot of trouble, but it's because I love Z so much. But Super did a great job. The thing is, with this new show, I feel like I haven't seen it. We don't know how it's going to end up, but it's just like, I feel like it's just going too much into the direction of Dragon Ball and not mixing it up like Z, like Super. Super mixed up Z and Dragon Ball, but it looks like it's going back to Dragon Ball, which is what I do not like. As a guy who loves Z like more than anything, I really don't want another, like, Dragon Ball was good. It was a good show, but I just don't want another version of Dragon Ball. It just because you already showed me the seriousness of Z. You know, you already showed me the mixture of both, and you're gonna just like take what I love about Z, and you're just gonna take it away completely. You know, as a fan who loves Z, that's just my opinion. If you love Dragon Ball, you probably would love this show. But I saw Dragon Ball Z as a kid growing up, because I used to watch it when I was 5. I saw it as like an adult show, an action-packed show, fighting. I was doing martial arts too. I liked that aspect of it, and Dragon Ball had that too. But Dragon Ball, it was more like, you know, adventure. You know, if you like that adventure style, then you'll love it. But I like the fighting, going against a powerful guy. You know, and it had Z had its adventures too, not as much as Dragon Ball, but you know, they had certain things, you know, that they did too, and it had so much great characters. I think the characters in Z were a little bit better than Dragon Ball. Like the Cell was a good idea. You know, Frieza was a great idea. You know, the Super Saiyan transformations were great. So many different things that they added I thought were awesome. But that's just my preference. You know, everyone has different opinions. I think
the difference too with Dragon Ball is it was like an adventure kung fu show. Dragon Ball Z is really, honestly, it's strayed a lot from its roots, and it did it in a good way, right?
Yeah.
But the original Dragon Ball, if you rewatch a lot of those battles, like with King Piccolo and Tien Shinhan, and like all these different enemies that they encountered, like Goku couldn't just throw a spirit bomb or do like or reach some crazy high level. Like he had to fight like a human being most of the time. If you watch, like, he had the power pole. He used a lot of like very, very good footwork and good punches and kicks, and he would try to outmaneuver his opponents a lot. And so that fighting style was a lot more like kung fu, like martial arts, like human martial arts. And so that action, it honestly was there were some battles in Dragon Ball that were like some of the coolest action I've ever seen in this series. It's just different. Dragon Ball Z, like, it's like epic, powerful. Like, you really like to see them charge up for 5 minutes at a time and reach this Super Saiyan form, and then like just knock them out with like a fully charged Kamehameha. Like, it's very epic, but it's not really like fighting. It's more like just like who can throw the biggest energy attack at that person, And so what I like about going back to Dragon Ball is they're going to have, I'm sure of it, they're going to have really, tightly choreographed fighting scenes with like actual footwork and different like different fighting strategies, and not just like, let's throw the biggest energy ball that we can at this person. So
they don't. I disagree with that. If you look at the Vegeta Goku fight, that was probably that's like one of the best fights in all of Z. I mean, even Dragon Ball, that was very well choreographed. Yeah, Saiyan Saga, that was good. I think they have better fights in Z than Dragon Ball. They're more choreographed in Z. If like, for instance, you look at the Cell versus Gohan fight, that was very good. I think that's better than any Dragon Ball fight, was the Cell Gohan fight. And then you have the Goku Vegeta fight, both of them, the Majin one as well as the beginning of the Saiyan Saga. I think they're just as good, if not, I think they're better with the energy balls added to it. Makes it even better, in my opinion. Like the Goku versus Gallic Gun versus Kamehameha was the best thing ever, that I saw. I just feel like, yeah, you're right that they do more martial arts, I guess, than Dragon Ball, but I think the fighting was a lot better in Z. I mean, I think it's much more choreographed, like way better techniques, and they had like each person had their own special powers. Like, it made it way better. I prefer Z. I just prefer Z. For me, nothing beats the Z. I think Z is just the flagship show of Dragon Ball. Like, Dragon Ball, when it came to the United States, Z was the one that got it up, to that status. Because if Z wasn't successful, they probably wouldn't have had Dragon Ball on TV. They wouldn't have GT. But Z was so good that it helped bring those shows over. So it's just my opinion. I just think, for me, I know people prefer Dragon Ball, and I'm cool with that, but I just think Z is just better for me. Nothing can change my mind. I just think Z is just a better show, for me at least.
To build on what Phil was saying, so there was another anime I followed called Naruto, and then they had the sequel series, Naruto Shippuden, which was basically just 2 years in the future or whatever. Well, anyways, that had an issue with what Dragon Ball Z had, where basically, towards the end, or at least Super did, where in the beginning, certain attacks were kind of like hard to pull off, or you can only do so many of them a day. Towards the end of the series, these people were like shooting these things off like machine guns. But there was one fight, though, that they had, and at least it's considered by at least a lot of fans to be the best one. At least for me, it's definitely the best one. It was between Kakashi and this character called Obito. And they had this awesome like hand-to-hand combat, and then when they did use those superpower moves, it was fairly sparingly. Like, it wasn't like they were blowing up half a mountain on each throw of the punch. And most of it was just that hand-to-hand combat. And the fighting style was just so clean. The animation was so good, and it was so cool at the same time, because it's like the attacks kind of like went along with their punches and stuff like that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just going to fire a million blasts at you. And it was awesome. But then, like, when you went to the main series, like, because the funny part was that fight wasn't in the manga. It was just like this bonus thing in the anime, but it was so good. But then when you go to the main anime, and they're just doing this thing, they're just throwing all these crazy attacks, or blowing up stuff, and it's just like, it's just like one of those things. It's like, because I guess it kind of goes back to that thing. You know how cool the show can be, and when it's just like all these like blasts flying at them, then it kind of, because in the anime, what became an issue was that they had this guy called Madara as the main bad guy, and his powers got to the point where it was so ridiculous. You're like, okay, now you know the heroes have to get some type of superpower, some power up, because there's no way they can contend with them as they are now. There's no way. And sure enough, like maybe like a couple chapters later, they get the power up, and so it just kind of ruined the whole like thing. Because towards the end, I'm just like, because I put so much time into this series, I was just like, I'm just there, like, you know, it's like kind of like you just sitting there, you just waiting for it to end. It's just like, this is where we're at now. It's like we went from here in the beginning with all this potential, then the end they just squander it all, and it's just, it was bad. And then I think with Dragon Ball, I think it's kind of like that too, only to a certain extent. Because when I think about the Daima thing, I think it kind of goes back to wasted potential, because I think about characters like that Devil Man who can burst someone up with, if they have evil intent in their bodies. So more magical based attacks or stuff like that. And I think if they had stuff like that where these characters were able to scale up, or at least prove to be a threat where they didn't have to fire the biggest blast, I think that would have made, at least that could give this show potential. Because I guess to kind of like circle back, because I only know so much of their turn to kids. Do they lose a whole bunch of their power, so they get a whole like weaker?
Almost certainly they won't be able to use the same moves at the same level. I'm pretty sure, because why else would they turn them into kids? Like, I think that's part of what Akira Toriyama wants to do. But to me, like, I love the fights in Dragon Ball Z. Don't get me wrong, but like I could probably rewatch Dragon Ball more than I could rewatch Dragon Ball Z, in the sense that Dragon Ball has like a lot more strategy to the fights, and in some of those fights they kept me on the edge of my seat and surprised me more than Dragon Ball Z. And the one that I would talk about there is when Goku battles King Piccolo. If you guys saw that, or if you remember it,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, that was a good fight. The hole in the
end
stomach.
of that fight, right? Like, to summarize the end of that fight, like, there was a lot of stuff before, but at the end, Goku was lying on the ground with broken legs and one broken arm, and he could only move his other arm. And King Piccolo was in the air, like getting ready to charge at him and finish him, and he could barely move a muscle in his body. And like, what really, like, that was a memorable fight for me, because I had no idea how it was going to end, and I was so surprised the way that Goku, in a split second, decided to do a Kamehameha to like basically launch himself in the air and into Piccolo and just like go straight through him. Like, that was so surprising. And so, like, that's a very different type of fight where the odds are stacked against you, and you can't just do one last charge and shoot out all your energy. You have to think of a strategy to defeat the person. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, with this limitation of them being kids and being less powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about that thing though is, like, if it followed like the same, it's just a random thing, but King Piccolo should not have died from that. He should have easily regenerated himself. Like, I if it was like, you know, like Dragon Ball Z and stuff, but like, but like, that was good. I enjoyed that. It was a really, I've seen that many times. You know, Tien was down. I think it was like Goku broke all of his bones, and he used the Kamehameha on the ground with one arm, and then used the Dragon Fist.
That was the most tension. Yeah. The most tension I've felt in a Dragon Ball fight, probably out of all of them, because like, it really looked like you really thought Goku and everyone would die in that moment. And then it was just spectacular how he beat King Piccolo. Like, that was amazing when I saw it.
I just like, I've seen Dragon Ball a couple of times. For me, because I've seen Z first, and Dragon Ball is a good show. If you're more of the adventure type guy, it makes complete sense. But if you're more like action, like, you know, you like action movies, you want to see the action, I would say Z just has way better action, in my opinion. Like, Dragon Ball has some good fights, but it's a little bit more playful fights. You know, it's not serious like Z is. Like,
Dragon Ball Z is for people that appreciate the power aspect and like wanting to be the most powerful. Dragon Ball is for people that appreciate the martial arts aspect and the adventure aspect. They're just different things, you know?
Yeah, I think the martial arts, I would say, for me, I think Z is just as good with the martial arts. I think it has more dynamic moves. I mean, for that I would split it, but I think Z is martial art wise better. But adventure wise, Dragon Ball blows it out of the water.
Well, I think I slow it down. I think, because I mean, when you do think about the martial arts inside Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, like, a lot of their fights boil. Well, because, I mean, how many times have you seen like two characters duking it out at one another, and they're doing that thing where their arms and legs are like blurs, and you just hear that like all that whooshing sound and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And because then you never really get to see them throw a punch because they're wanting to show how fast these guys are like going at it. But I think they need to realize that when they do show them fighting like that, it kind of gets boring because you're not really seeing any real blows. But when they slow it down, when they do a blow, then it's like that's a little bit cooler. And
Yeah.
I think if they focus more on that, then they can show how cool sort of some of the attacks can be. Kind of like where. Like we all were just saying, because like when Goku would use his feet to use a Kamehameha, or then I'm trying to think of another one that was like creative where when he fought Frieza, there was that one time where Frieza couldn't detect power levels, like sense them, and so Goku did that one thing where he had the Kamehameha where he was able to do it to where it was just a ball.
And you just tricked him, just think that
came from above and kicked him in the head. And that was cool because I was like, oh, we never seen the Kamehameha. Like, every time we ever seen a Kamehameha, it was always a beam. Never seen it in a ball in suspended animation almost. But it's just like Goku pretty much mastered the thing. I mean, he shot it off one try as a kid. I would imagine he would be getting pretty good on how to use the thing. And, that was a cool way that he used that power. And I think that was something that maybe I wish I saw more of inside this series. Like, the closest thing I can think of off the top of my head was when Goku charged. Well, it was when he got the Ultra Instinct thing in Tournament of Power, and the Kefla. I think that was the fusion name, right? Kefla.
Yeah, Kefla.
Yeah, she was about to blast him, and I guess there was really no way to avoid it in a sense. And he was able to run, and he used the Kamehameha like a charge state as almost like a skateboard to grind on the beam attack. And then right when he was at that right spot to hit her, then he just unleashes. And it was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Because that was another thing where, besides the ball thing, no one's ever kind of used it to kind of I guess, sort of deflect another blow like that. And that's a cool way of seeing it. And I think kind of like what y'all were saying, just like how we see this cool way that these powers are used. And it's memorable because we've always seen them used a certain way, but then when they were used in a way that was not the intended use that we've seen it all the time, it was just cool. It was just like, oh, well, that was it's just that. It's like using the Kamehameha like a rocket, like a rocket to launch yourself. I mean, that's awesome. Using it to grind on something like that, or use it to distract someone like that, like with Frieza. It's seeing that creative way of using that same old party trick is just made it more special. Oh, which reminds me, Naveed, when you're talking about Piccolo surviving like King Piccolo, I think to go on a more nerdy side, I think the more powerful the Namekian, I think the better their regeneration is, like what they can recover from. Because King Piccolo couldn't survive like a hole through the chest. Then you go to Saiyan Saga, but Piccolo gets hit with a blast and he's not obliterated, right? But he still dies. And then trying to think. Then fast forward, he gets shot through the chest by Frieza, and he's he pretty much collapses, like he's pretty much on the brink of death. But the fast forward to Buu Saga, he gets hit with Deborah's spit, and he turns to stone, and he actually shatters. And there's one point where Trunks asks him, well, how the hell did that happen?
His head was intact, right? As long as his head's intact, he's fine.
But that's my point, is I think because I think the more powerful the Namekian, the better the regeneration or what it takes to kill them.
Yeah, no, trust me. When it comes to nerdy, Dragon Ball, I don't know too much. I watched Dragon Ball, and I'm average on Dragon Ball. But Z, I know, I read the manga. I know every single detail of Z, almost. I even know which ones can't. The entire Goku going to heaven or the other world is all filler, right? That doesn't exist. There's no Python. That was just, that's all. Yeah, that one. Yeah, the Snake Way. The first one where he's going to King Kai's place is that's real. Canon. But the one where he goes after he dies from Cell, that one's not canon at all. So that's that, and the Garlic Jr. is not canon. There's a lot of non-canon in Z.
I knew Garlic Jr. wasn't, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do make him canon. Because Broly wasn't canon originally, but he became canon, and I think they might do that
Yeah, and another thing people don't know is like when Goku was fighting Kid Buu, right? Super Saiyan 3. I actually got into it Anthony with on this one. He was saying Super Saiyan 3 isn't powerful because he wasn't killing Kid Buu. Well, actually, Goku was holding back, so he gives Vegeta a chance to fight Kid Buu. So he wasn't even fighting his full Super Saiyan 3 power. He even admitted it in the manga and the anime. So he actually could have finished off Kid Buu early, but he was just holding back so Vegeta would have a chance.
Well, that was the same
The
thing.
most-
Didn't
Yeah.
the same thing happen with the kids too? Like when it was Chunky Boo, like Fat Boo, wasn't that
Yeah,
the
he
same
was-
thing
yeah.
too? Where he could have killed Majin Buu, but he decided not to because he wanted the boys to take a crack
Yeah.
at him.
I mean, it hasn't been stated in the manga or the anime, but I'm pretty sure he could have killed him. But it hasn't been like
Kid Buu was
stated.
stronger
But
than Majin Buu.
he was. He probably could have. He could have probably ended it. But he was. You gotta understand that at that time he's running out of time because the more energy he uses for Super Saiyan 3, the
yeah.
less time he has on Earth. So he also had a time limit on him as well. So the more energy he uses, he's gonna end up getting. And he end up
Had to go back
turning
to
Super
the
Saiyan 3. Yeah.
Afterlife thing. Didn't
But,
time travel slower in the afterlife? That's why he was able to train up like he was able to.
They never they didn't really explain it, but I guess because his body was able to contain a lot more power because he was dead, so he was able to transform to like Super Saiyan 3 and stuff a lot easier because his body was not really alive or something. It's his body pretty much. He didn't have a human body or he didn't have a Saiyan body. He had like
he
a
didn't have the same
immortal
stuff.
body, yeah, because he's dead, so that he was able to transform a lot more easier during that time.
One explanation that time traveled slower, passes by more slowly inside the afterlife than it does in the regular world.
I haven't heard that one, but it could be true.
Or
But I know that's
like he's able to get more training in than like Vegeta could have.
Yeah. I think it also has to do with the body he's in. His body's dead. I heard that in the anime that he was able to because his body's like not alive anymore, so he's able to become stronger a lot faster. But yeah, there's a lot of things like secret things in C that I don't know, but like I tried to
Something that makes you wonder why didn't like Kami or any other people tell like Goku and all of them back in the day, like when the Saiyans were coming, why did they ever tell them like, hey, we got this thing called a hyperbolic time chamber? It's fully locked, it's fully ready. Go train in there because all the training you could have done like all in that time, you're not gonna be able to do it. So
actually, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go. They actually did go to the hyperbolic time. If you remember in the Saiyan saga, they did. I think it was Piccolo, Yamcha, not Piccolo. Sorry, Krillin, Yamcha, and Chaozu, and all those guys. They actually did go to the hyperbolic time chamber in the Saiyan saga, where they faced the old Saiyans. Do you remember that? They faced the old Saiyans from like thousands of years ago.
Hyperbolic time chamber, though.
That was technically the hyperbolic time chamber. It was. It's really strict. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Some type of image training.
No, I think they didn't explain it explicitly, but I have a feeling that was the time chamber. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that was like sort of like in the vicinity of it. I don't know what that is exactly, but that was like their training in Kami's tower. So I don't know if it's a time chamber. I'm just saying like it could be, but they did go and they trained against those old Saiyans and end up getting destroyed because they were a lot weaker, but. That could be. I don't know what that is exactly, but it might be.
Was that in the manga or was that just the anime only?
It was in both. I think.
Pendulum room.
Yeah. That's it.
That's not the. Must be like some type of virtual reality training thing.
Yeah, I thought it was the same thing as the time chamber. I wasn't sure.
No, because it's like that was something that. I mean, the excuse would probably be made that none of them were going to be strong enough to handle the hyperbolic time chamber. That might be the only thing I can see that would kind of like defend why the characters never gave them, access to it. Because it'd be like, well, we didn't do that because you wouldn't survive or something like that. We didn't think you would survive or something like that. That'd probably be what would be the excuse. Like when they ask, like, why did you guys ever tell us about this?
Yeah, it could also be because they weren't Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, or Trunks. Those guys had a chance of they would get stronger in a year. There's a good chance like Krillin, Tien, and Yamcha they wouldn't get as strong if they were training in the time chamber with each other. Like, you know what I mean? They're not like powerful like a Saiyan,
Yeah.
And it's also like they just get an extra year, but that might not be enough for like people that are humans. That's just my thinking. If it was like Goku and Gohan, yeah, it would make more sense.
Yeah, but the only thing that kind of like detracts from that a bit is that I guess I look at Krillin, like, because Krillin was training with Goku early in Dragon Ball. And for the most part, for a long time, they were pretty on par with one another. And then, it started diverging around, I can't remember when. It was when Goku was a little bit older and he fought, Tien. That's where it really started to, like, kind of diverge between their powers. But I guess my point bringing that up is that Krillin at that time, they were training on a similar level, and then I'm looking at Super now, as it is, or even DBZ. It was like Krillin's like the strongest human on the planet, and he's still able to do pretty amazing things. And yeah, there's a huge lag in power behind him and the Saiyans, but the humans are always getting powerful too. And I guess when I'm looking at Super, it's like, that reminds me of a good question. How powerful do you think Krillin is in like Super? Because I always think of it like, as far as the main cast, they can always beat the last villain pretty easily. Do you think like, okay, not Frieza Black, not Golden Frieza or Frieza Golden? Do you think that Krillin could have defeated old Frieza at 100% power at Super?
Yeah, I think so. I think at that time he's a lot stronger. Some people might even say he can beat Cell. Perfect Cell. I mean,
I think so too. I think almost all the DBZ cast, excluding Tien, could have beaten Cell at the Tournament of Power.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about max power Cell. When I say this, I'm saying it like at their max thing.
I don't know about that, because Saiyans, like, they've always been like 10x, 100x stronger than humans. And when they fight someone strong, they increase 10x more than a human would have increased from fighting that same person. Like, that's part of their genes, is that they just grow stronger more easily. And so I think, like with Frieza and with Cell, like, they were basically able to like destroy planets, right? Like, Frieza did destroy a planet. That was his strategy for killing Goku when he wasn't strong enough, was to destroy the planet. And do you think Krillin has that type of capability, that type of energy capacity as a human being? I don't think so. Like, unless he uses some strategy, like his Destructo Disc, which actually did, do damage to
Nappa, right? Nappa or
yeah,
Frieza, Nappa, yeah.
He was able to like catch Frieza off guard and cut him in half. But if you're talking about a 1-to-1 fight that really comes down to power, I don't think Krillin's power is the same as even Frieza in the Frieza arc of Dragon Ball Z.
I think so. I think, because I mean, the way I look at it is like, if a character can take a punch from another character that's like way more powerful, and we're just talking about blowing up planets. I mean, even back in the Dragon Ball days, Master Roshi was able to blow up the moon, and at that time, I think even his max power was at like 300 or something like that. So even Master Roshi was able to blow up a pretty sizable planetary body. And then with Krillin, it's like he's like I'm just talking about Super. Well, even at the end of DBZ, he was way more powerful than Master Roshi, because Master Roshi, at least as far as we knew at DBZ at that point, he didn't train. He was still at that weak state. But then fast forward to like, obviously Super, they're all more powerful. But Krillin is like way more powerful too, because, I know Goku was holding back, but when he was sparring with Goku, that's pretty sizable, because Goku at base state can probably easily wipe the floor with like Kid Buu, Majin Buu, and all those other characters, because he got way more powerful after the Battle of the Gods. And Krillin was able to spar with him, and I know Goku was holding back. There's no way that if Goku went full at it, even at base state, Krillin wouldn't manage. But we're talking about these characters where, kind of like how Goku couldn't even touch Beerus, even at Super Saiyan 3. It's like, that's a big thing for base state Goku going against Krillin. And this is after training after Battle of the Gods. And I guess the way I look at it too is just that if Krillin can at least tag a base state Goku after Battle of the Gods, then that should kind of correlate with him like basically soloing almost all the old DBZ villains.
I mean, if you're going to use that reference point,
maybe. But again, the challenge with that reference is that you don't know how hard Goku was actually fighting. It doesn't seem like he was actually fighting that hard. So you'd have to speculate on that part of it. But to me, what it seems like is like anyone who has any amount of Saiyan DNA is just inherently stronger than human beings by a lot. And they're going to progress a lot faster. And so, like, you look at Trunks when he came back and defeated Frieza, like, super easily. And that was supposed to be a stronger Frieza. They built him stronger than when Goku defeated him. Well, it's still because he's got that Saiyan capacity and he's got that Saiyan energy. And if you look at their power as like drawing on their natural power and bringing it out, which is like the whole philosophy of chi, which this idea of like the ki that they use for energy attacks is based on this idea of chi from like kung fu. It's like, what if chi was actually some energy in your body you could bring out, not just like a fighting spirit or a fighting energy. And them being Saiyans means that they have more energy to bring out of their bodies than humans do. And so I don't. Maybe Krillin could defeat Frieza, but defeating Cell, who's like, he's been engineered to be stronger. I know Dragon Ball Super Krillin. Maybe he could defeat Frieza because we've already seen that he has a Destructo Disc that can cut him in half. But are you talking like Perfect Cell? You think he could beat Perfect Cell by himself?
Yeah, I think he can definitely. I mean, I'm talking about.
Look at. So I guess the question there is, does Krillin have the same energy capacity as Gohan when he annihilated Perfect Cell? Does he have the same capacity as that? Because that's what he would need to like. Because remember, Perfect Cell, you have to destroy every cell in his body. So does Krillin have that type of energy output to destroy every cell in Cell's body?
He doesn't even have to. He just has to destroy the core. He doesn't have to destroy every cell, because with Cell, the only reason why he survived was that his core survived, and because of that core surviving, he was able to regenerate. So if Krillin could do it both ways. He can blow up the whole body, every little cell there is, or just the core. He can do both.
Does Krillin? What energy attack does he have that could fully envelop Cell? Like what energy attack?
Or a Destructo Disc is one.
Well, he can do a command.
Well, that's a thin frisbee. That wouldn't destroy every cell in Cell's body.
Yeah, it's like pretty much everyone on the DBZ.
How big of a Kamehameha? Is it even big enough to destroy Cell?
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. Strong. It can. You can. Cause the thing about the Kamehameha is that you can make it as big or small as you want, and the thing is, like, either he can hit him in the core or he can just destroy the whole body. Now that's just the Kamehameha thing. Now, if he wanted to, he can also do. It was like one that I think we only seen happen once, but it was over in the Saiyan Saga. It was when they had the Cyber and Krillin done this pretty cool attack where he shot this big blast in the air, and he was able to do this scatter shot, kind of like similar to Piccolo's Hell Grenade or something like that. And he could envelop Cell that way. But at this point, I'm just talking about like just the character's ability to fight. Because, like I said, I think because all the characters gotten way more powerful after the Buu saga when the whole Super thing hits.
But what you guys are talking about is soloing, right? Yeah. And so Frieza, Cell, and Buu, none of those were solo fights. Maybe Frieza was the one that was most solo because like Goku at that point was the only one that could really go toe to toe with him. But like, look at how many people and how much damage had to be done to Cell and Buu before Goku finished him off. And you're saying Krillin can 1v1 him from 100% health?
Oh yeah, hell yeah! If we're talking about Frieza Saga, we're talking about Frieza Saga, and with like Krillin at Dragon Ball Super, hell yeah, I think he could.
What's the past Dragon Ball Z? What's the biggest villain that Krillin defeated 1v1? I'm trying to remember. In Super, did he like in the Tournament of Power? Which people did he take out by himself?
I actually don't remember. Let me see.
Because I think that's what you have to compare it to, and you'd have to see was that person the equivalent of Frieza or Cell or Buu in Z.
Well, the best example I can think of is, I mean, if we have something that's a little bit more stated directly, we'd have to look at Master Roshi fighting that Birdman guy when he transformed. And there was one point where Master Roshi was saying that I guess the gimmick of that character was that when he's in that transformed state fighting, he becomes infinitely more powerful. Like he exponentially is getting stronger and stronger. And Master Roshi basically says he has to use that super mega Kamehameha blast to like knock him
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So like I think that would be a good instance to where to show like that's a character that could easily where Master Roshi, because I still think Krillin was probably the strongest fighter outside of the cyborgs, like the androids. I think he was still the strongest fighter on the DBZ cast. Well,
so you bring up the androids, and like I would agree with you to say that Android 17 is the guy, right?
Feats.
He could easily defeat any of the Dragon Ball Z supervillains because he's an android who never gets tired, and we've seen that he's been training since Z. He's been training as hard as he can since Z, and so he could defeat any of those Z villains. But I don't. It's still a hard sell for me to say Krillin could, unless I'm comparing him to someone in Tournament of Power that he defeated by himself. That's the same level as them.
Well, because I'm kind of going off to the mini tournament where it was against Universe 7 and 8, where, those characters are facing off against Hit, Winnie the Pooh the Bear Guy, Robot Man, and then, like, knockoff Frieza. Like, those characters were, were super powerful to where they kind of gave Goku and the cast a little bit of trouble. And this kind of goes back again to where this is after post-Battle of the Gods where, things were a lot more difficult as far as, like, the scale of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I liked all the shows. I give Super a hard time because it came after Z, but it's just they're all good. They're all unique in their own way. Just what you prefer, honestly.
Malcolm, going back to Krillin for a second. Here's the official list of who Krillin fought in Tournament of Power. So he defeated Shosa and Majora, and I don't even remember who they were, but it says he was eliminated by Frost. And so that's actually a good question. Is Frost is the Frieza from another universe, right?
Knockoff Frieza, yeah.
Knockoff Frieza, and he's probably not as strong as Golden Frieza, which therefore might mean that he's as strong as original Frieza.
No,
and Krillin was
no
defeated.
way he's strong as original Frieza.
You think he's stronger than original Frieza?
Hold on.
And this is
way he can defeat. There's no
Frost,
way
Frost
okay,
defeated
what
Krillin.
power scaling are you going off of here? Because
Frost defeated Krillin, and so how much stronger is Frieza than Frost? That's the question.
Okay, but that's the only issue when you're putting it like that is so there was a mini tournament between Universe 7 and 8, and the issue is that Frost was able to somewhat go toe to toe with like Goku at base state and even Super Saiyan, and this is a Goku after Battle of the Gods. The same Goku that had to go, who couldn't even touch Beerus at Super Saiyan level 3. And Beerus was barely barely screwing around. Even when Goku went Super Saiyan, hey, Miles.
Hey.
He can't hear us.
Oh, okay.
But anyways, yeah, so we're talking about Goku that went against Frost, who, after Battle of the Gods, who Super Saiyan 3 state couldn't touch Beerus. And after training, getting Super Saiyan God, he got a little bit stronger to his base state. And then they were training with those new stats. And that was a character that was fighting with Frost, maybe not, obviously not maximum power. But we're talking about a Goku who got amped up after Battle of the God, after Cell Saga, after Frieza Saga, after Battle of the God Saga, and all this other stuff. And Frost was a character that was fighting Goku at that time. And I guess my point is that I don't think Frost is definitely way above Frieza Saga. He's above Majin Buu Saga, like as far as even Kid Buu or whatever. But the issue is I don't think he was strong as Golden Frieza, because obviously Goku wasn't going at his maximum effort. He only did that with Hit. But with Frost, he kind of only went a little bit above base state.
So this is a good argument that I've seen so far. Like, Krillin is stronger than Ginyu Force, but Ginyu Force were basically subjected by Frieza. Frieza ruled them, and I think you just have to show some comparable villain, and show that villain was defeated by Krillin, and that villain is the same level as Frieza in Z. And right now, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing someone he's defeated in Super that's equivalent to Frieza in Z. Because Frieza in Z, he could just remember he was the ruler of like the galaxy, right?
Yeah, but
Like he enslaved Saiyans to fight across the galaxy. So is the question is basically, is Krillin the top fighter in the galaxy if you take away all of the other Z fighters?
That's not a good measurement though, because Frieza
How
didn't
not?
really. Because the reason why is that you had characters like Majin Buu, because like Frieza acknowledged that his dad told him about a character called Majin Buu, and that he had to, that was a character that he shouldn't touch. And I guess my point is that I don't know. I mean, because then by that logic, then that would mean that I get what you're trying to say. Is that I guess what I'm trying to say is like, at least with my logic, is that Krillin was able to fight in the Tournament of Power where a lot of those characters were incredibly strong. And I'm glad you brought up Frost, because Frost is a pretty good measuring pole in a sense. Because Frost fought Goku at base state, and even Vegeta at base state, and even Piccolo. He fought pretty much all three of them. And Piccolo is immensely stronger than he was in Majin Buu arc, and he was fighting Frost.
Yeah.
And the point of me bringing that up is that if Krillin was able to fight with Frost, that puts him at a state where, not to say that he could have beaten Frost, but that puts him at a state where you have this character that can fight basically these characters that were a lot stronger than when we saw them in Majin Buu or Battle of the Gods. Then that means that that kind of gives you a state where, was he struggling? Was he having a hard time? Was it just a complete wash? And that's something that you can use, where if you can use a more powerful character that fought another one that may have been weaker, kind of like a whole measuring thing. It'd be like, I don't know, you have Mike Tyson fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger, who then fought, I don't know, Pee Wee Herman. If Pee Wee Herman held his own against, Mike Tyson, then it kind of gives you a good measuring pole on how he's going to do it against Arnold. And then that's the same kind of like aspect. You know how stupid strong Goku, Vegeta, and Piccolo are. So that gives you a good measuring pole on what may happen if this character fought one of the other cast. And I mean, not to say, there's no way in hell I thought Krillin was going to beat Frost. There's no way, because Frost was way more powerful. Like Krillin, like the only reason why Frost almost lost was because Roshi. This is like a different fight, but the only reason why like a character like Roshi almost won was because he used that Mafumba to kind of like seal Frost. That was the only way that someone like Krillin could possibly beat Frost without killing him, was doing some type of trickery or something of that sort. But that's how you can, outside of them beating a character one-on-one, you can kind of use how well they struggle or how well they do against another character who fought a more powerful one. And Frost fought Piccolo, Goku, and I think Vegeta. I really want to say he fought Vegeta as well. But Krillin, depending on how well he does against Frost, that kind of gives you a good measuring pole of how well he could do against a character that was able to at least somewhat stand his own against some of the most powerful characters in the show.
Yeah. I laughed earlier because I read this comment on this thread about how strong is Krillin. And the comment was, he's the second strongest warrior in the multiverse, surpassed only by Mr. Satan. No. So you can tell that person doesn't think either of them are actually that strong. But the other thing I've seen in this thread that I think has a lot of merit to it is that basically, like, the argument is that Krillin is potentially at Super Saiyan level. And the reason why I think that's good merit is because if you look at like Dragon Ball Z, as soon as the Saiyans reach Super Saiyan level, they just surpassed all of the humans, like by like 100-fold, right? Like you would never see a human be like the closer in any of these main supervillain fights. Like they didn't close anything from that point on, right? Like they were openers, they could support, but they weren't doing anything really with Frieza or Cell or Boo or anything like that. And if you look at what Super Saiyan is, like we could look up the definition of it, but it's like increasing your power level like 10 times or 100 times or something crazy like that, right? And so like Krillin is essentially has no forms, right? He has no amplification of his base power level as far as I can see in the series. And if so, he's always fighting at his base power level, and Frieza can already amplify his power level through like 4 forms that's already a bit of a stretch in my mind. Like, how good is his base power level is what it comes down to.
That's the issue with the whole the form stuff, though, because everything in Dragon Ball can get stronger. Like the base form obviously gets stronger, the Super Saiyan forms get stronger too. And the reason why I say the Super Saiyan forms as well is because I'm looking at the Cell Saga where basically
Well, Super Saiyan 1, is that stronger from Dragon Ball Z versus Dragon Ball Super? I don't think so. I think he just has
they
better
make it more
techniques.
efficient. Because remember that one thing where they're saying they were going to make it better by basically amplifying it, and when technically doing
Like, you
the
can do
ascended.
Kaioken on top of a Super Saiyan. We've
No, but
seen
I'm saying
that.
when they optimized it, where they tried being Super Saiyan like 24/7.
I guess I see what you're saying. Like, you can make it more efficient, but does that mean it's stronger? I don't know if
Yeah,
that's the
but
same thing.
that's the issue though, because then what I'm trying to say is that because the state itself is just an amplifier. That's all it is.
Right, right.
But those people are trying to say that, oh yeah, he's Super Saiyan state now. But it's like, okay, Super Saiyan at what time? Because I can make a little mouse Super Saiyan somehow, and the mouse is still a mouse. It's just 50, whatever, 10 times stronger now, or 50 times stronger. It's still a mouse. But if I give
Yeah.
it to like an elephant or something, yeah, that elephant's going to be way stronger. But I mean, because when they say Super Saiyan, okay, like Super Saiyan at what stage? Are we talking about like Goku as a kid, Goku during Frieza? Are we talking about Goku during the Super Saga? So using the Super Saiyan, like, oh, Krillin is as strong as a Super Saiyan. Well, that's not a good measurement because those Super Saiyan states were used on characters at throughout the series, but their base state was at different power levels.
Well, I think what you're talking about comes down to controlling Super Saiyan, because like when Goku first learns Super Saiyan, and when a lot of the younger Saiyans learn it, like they lose it pretty quickly because they don't know how to control it, right? And so maybe with them learning how to control it, they're able to unlock the power more. But Krillin, at the end of the day, he has no amplification power at all. He just has base power, and he has some good moves. Don't get me wrong, but if he's going up against people that can amplify their power, it just seems like his base power level would have to be really, really high
Yeah, and that's why I
to be
think
able to beat
I think
them.
his
And
base
I don't
power
know if
got
it's that high.
I think his base power got a lot higher after. I mean, the reason why I say super, my main issue with super was how the power scaling went all off the charts. I was just gonna say because the power scaling got all off the charts because we
Yeah,
had characters that were basically sidelined. Since be honest, since Frieza Saga, all the other Z casts got sidelined in I guess in favor of the Super Saiyan stuff. Because you had Vegeta, you had Krillin, you had Gohan, then you had Trunks, and then Piccolo had a little bit of sparing stuff in there, but that was about it. And then the
yeah,
Buu Saga, all it was just Super Saiyan galore. None of the other Z fighters got a chance really. And then moved the Super, then they had to make an excuse to these Z fighters being somewhat contenders at all these other fighters or against all these other fighters. Then it's like now they had to make an excuse to make them all scale up, get more powerful. And then that's where Krillin had a chance to power up a whole bunch. And they even had Master Roshi power up a whole bunch. Because, kind of like going back, he was able to hold his own against Frost a little bit. Was he going to ever win? Oh, hell no. I mean, without the Mafumba thing, he wasn't going to win. But he was able to hold his own against Frost. And I think, as a character, Frost is a good measuring pole to compare, because he fought against Krillin and Master Roshi. And then and then using how strong Frost was in that mini saga, that mini tournament, then that kind of gives you an idea like how powerful the other Z fighters got.
Yeah. You do have really good points. I think one of the big things that I'd have to get around to see Krillin as like able to defeat Frieza is that, as far as I've seen in Dragon Ball, there's really only two ways you can increase your power level. It's either you train a long time or you reach some new state, right? And so like
But that's the issue.
if you
Okay, look at the androids, because the
right.
androids. I mean, because it's like one of those things. I don't agree with it, but this is Toriyama what he wanted. So kind of even using the most recent superhero movie, the guy I think is the grandson of Dr. Gero, or is he like he's a relation of Dr. Gero. But he
Right.
makes androids or cyborgs that are stronger, or damn near stronger than like I guess what I'm trying to say is you could have thrown them in the tournament of power and they would have done really good. And these were things that were just made within a short amount of time. And then
Right.
the power scaling, it's like it doesn't like okay,
But
Gohan's a good example.
it's also like 30 years later, technology has advanced, and he could be a smarter scientist than his grandfather was.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I guess to me, the way I always look at it too, I guess it's Super really threw things for a loop. And what I mean by that, it's just it really threw scaling for a loop. And it started with Frieza, where he's like, well, I was born this strong, and if I train for 9 months, I'm gonna be able to be really strong. And then it went from because they had to like make an excuse to wear Frieza Saga, who meant nothing at the end of Battle of the Gods and stuff like that. He meant nothing at the end of Battle of the Gods. He meant nothing at the end of Majin Buu. Then they had to make an excuse that after all these years he could train up for 9 months and then he can do all this.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that's I think discredits Krillin to some extent is that there are people in the Dragon Ball universe that their genetics allow them to become stronger than other people through training. And humans, if we're equating Dragon Ball humans to our humans, like they have no special gifts to train and then get stronger than other species. Like the amount of work they put into training equals the amount of improvement they get out. But with Saiyans and Frieza, that's not true. It's like you put in the same amount of training as a human and you get 10 times out of it, basically, from what we're seeing. And at the end of Z, imagine Krillin's power level at the end of Z. It's like nowhere near Frieza, right? Like you would need like 100 Krillins to defeat Frieza if you're just doing power levels, something like that. And then at the end of Z, Krillin stopped training. Like from Super, he's like never trained. He's a police officer with like long hair. Like he's just enjoying his life, which is cool. But then you're saying within that like 9 months or however long they trained for the Tournament of Power, he has increased his level from Dragon Ball Z time to Frieza level Dragon Ball Z is what we're basically saying. And there's no amplifier that he has. And he didn't go to the hyperbolic time chamber. So like how did he increase that much in that short of a time as well?
I don't agree with it. I'm just saying at how they present the characters in Super. That's the issue. Like I like Super to a certain extent because it's like it's more Dragon Ball, but that's the issue with the power scaling because they had to give all these characters an excuse to be able to come close to fighting some of these other characters. And that's logically I get what you're saying. It doesn't make sense, but it was Toriyama's choice, so it's like that's what we have to run with. Because I mean the best example would even be Master Roshi. Like Master Roshi's the biggest BSer. I mean Krillin wasn't
he training? Wasn't he training since Z? Like doing it maybe not as hard, but he still did some type of training, didn't he?
No, he wasn't. Like the only thing that we have about Master Roshi training was a throwaway line when so I don't know if you remember it, but there was that one point where Goku went to that one place where he was going to recruit Tien Shion. And there was some chick that was under his tutelage where she went evil or she had this other plan. And
I remember that.
And she threw a sticker seal thing on Master Roshi, and he became like really strong, or he was unleashing himself. And, Goku was caught off guard.
Well, that's valid because look at the Namek saga, like the Grand Namekian unleashed the inner power of many fighters, and that's a proven way to. That's basically a new state.
I think she was just controlling him. I think that was the thing. I don't think it was an unleashed thing. I think it was just a control thing. I don't think it was Grand Elder Kai level because from what I remember, she just threw a spell on him that she can control him. It wasn't like Grand Elder Kai or.
Well, look at Majin Vegeta. That's how he increased his power, also by a spell. So that's a proven way in the universe.
That's a good point. But I guess with Master Roshi, that was a big thing because, like I said, going based on like the last power level, which was 300 back in Dragon Ball, the very beginning of Dragon Ball Z, and assuming because we didn't have any evidence of him training all the way to the end of Z, but the only thing we had in Dragon Ball Super was a throwaway line where Goku says something like, "Oh man, Master Roshi must have been getting some secret training in," and it's like, I wasn't watching the Funimation dub. I was listening, I was watching the original Japanese dub because I don't like watching the English dub because they changed some lines, and I guess that's the only thing we have for Master Roshi, and that's a bigger like power gap versus Krillin.
Yeah.
Because we go from like, because Krillin, let's just say he was 100, let's just say he was 500,000 at the end of Z.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I also hate that they introduced that numbers too.
Mm-hmm.
But going from like 300 to 500,000, that's a big thing. And then then going from that to Super, where they're contending with these characters that fought with, I guess God Ki Goku and God Ki Vegeta, it just really throws it off. And Super really threw off the scaling. And
Right.
I don't agree with how fast they scaled, because if we wanted to be more natural, then it should have been a thing that no matter what, we always saw these characters training in the background or something, and let's just say even if they get a pot shot off that kind of knocks the villain over, not over, like hurts them, but kind of like they're like, whoa, what the hell is that? Then I think that might have made things a little bit more legitimate as far as really going at it in Super. But because that never happened and they had to have an excuse for all these characters to fight in this multiversal tournament, that's where things get a little hairy, and Super really messed with that scaling.
Yeah. The one argument I could see to justify Krillin being as strong as DBZ Frieza now is like removing his inhibitions and his own self-doubt. Because if you look at Goku, he's pretty much the only character that's never had self-doubt, and he's always fought as hard as he possibly can, right? Vegeta has been close to that, but he had like his own pride and ego and doubt about his abilities during the Frieza saga when he saw Goku surpassing him, and then he overcame that in the Cell saga and Majin Buu saga, and he just fought because he wanted to be stronger, and that increased his power. And Gohan, his saga, from the Frieza arc, like he felt powerless, he felt weak, and then he overcame that in the Cell saga, and he realized that there's nothing, like Goku said, there's nothing wrong with you. If you just see that, you'll see your true power. And Piccolo, like, you have everything you need inside of you. You just have to bring it out. And so, like, other characters have overcome their own fears and doubts and become a lot stronger from that. And Krillin, right, like, the only real thing that I've seen him do pre-tournament of power that would increase his abilities that much was when he did that image training with Master Roshi and Goku, and he did have to, like, fight Frieza and Cell and all of those DBZ people by himself. And even though they were just images, like, he fought full out with them. And if you look back at the DBZ Frieza fight when Frieza killed Krillin was pretty scared and, like, worried the whole time, and he never fought really as well as he probably could have. So if the argument is Krillin could now defeat Frieza because, yeah, he's done some more training, but now he's just a more mentally focused and competent fighter fighting at his full abilities, then maybe I could see that, yeah.
That was what I was going to use. I mean, I put the clip in the chat, but that's what I was going to go off of. And it's, like I said, I wanted to be, because it's like one of those things, like, logically, like, I would totally agree with you on a lot of this stuff where, we never seen him train and all this, but because of how Super handled that was my issue with just, it's like, this is what we have. It's like, we gotta, like, it's kind of like it may not be the best way in how we reach the final stage, but that's where we're at with what they gave us, and that's the only issue that I have. And I'm hoping that, I guess I'm just hoping that they kind of like when you're saying that with them resetting the clock in a sense for Daima, I hope that kind of balances out where they can give it more breathing room to where these characters can be at similar levels, and that it won't ever happen again where the power gap is so wide that the other Z fighters or characters are just like nothing, like they don't even matter. Because that was something I hated, because they have such a rich cast, and then they don't utilize them all, and it's like, they have such cool powers.
That's one of the things that made Dragon Ball, like, a lot more fun for me to watch than Dragon Ball Z. I feel like with Dragon Ball Z, it's pretty much like the Goku show, and, like, maybe the Vegeta show, and then everyone else is just there to, like, open the fight and get a few punches. And, like, be on the sidelines and be like, yeah, go Goku, go Vegeta, make sure you dodge his energy attack. But, like, they're just, like, supporting members, right? For pretty much all of Dragon Ball Z, except for, like, the core 4 fighters. Like,
Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks. Like, those are the only people that really did anything in most of the important fights in Dragon Ball Z. But in Dragon Ball, I felt like pretty much until the end of Dragon Ball, every fighter had a role to play, and they had epic fights, and Goku actually didn't take out a lot of the big people and didn't land the biggest hits on a lot of the people. But he was just the guy that was able to hold on the longest and finish the fight a lot of the time. And that's what made Dragon Ball interesting, is like every fighter felt more balanced, It's not like the Goku show. It was like the cast around Goku was still just as fun and strong and good to watch.
I think that's why I made early Z pretty entertaining, because like looking at Raditz versus Goku and Piccolo, those two had a tag team to basically just take down one guy. And fast forward to Vegeta and Nappa, and with all the Cybermen, pretty much the whole DBZ cast was in the fray. Hell, even at the very end with Vegeta, even Yajirobe came into play and chopped off the tail.
Right,
totally surprise, and it's just like, whoa, it's like I didn't remember Yajirobe being in this fight, but he was in the fight, and that was and pretty much everyone was involved, well, except Master Roshi, but yeah, that's when he started being sidelined. But then fast forward to like even the Frieza saga, where that felt a little bit more hectic because you only had Krillin and Gohan, and those were really the only fighters on the planet at the time that were trying to go against all these crazy strong fighters, and they were basically trying to hide and get the Dragon Balls to make the wish, and then get the hell out of there, and then it became a whole bigger thing.
Yeah.
And Android Saga, then it's like, then all the DBZ characters started taking the sidelines. And hopefully with the Daima thing, hopefully everyone gets a chance to at least do something, because...
Well, it gives them, like, an ability to do something, because now it's like, in Super especially, like, when you've got, like, god level powers and galactic powers, like what can Bulma do? What can Tien Shinhan do? What can Master Roshi do? But like in Dragon Ball, like a lot of the ways that they got out of those situations was by working together, and like Bulma would have some great invention or contraption they could use, and Tien Shinhan could fight just as well as Goku, and they could tag. You really felt they were tag teaming when they were taking on some characters, and all of these different people, like they work together. It was more interesting that way, not just like, well, Goku's the strongest in the universe, we're just going to cheer him from the sideline,
That's what I'm hoping the new Daima is going to be like. But that's going to segue to my next thing. Have you ever seen Yu Yu Hakusho?
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Have you ever like watched the entire thing?
No, I haven't seen too much of it, no.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I think some of the stuff that you're talking about now that you want to see in Z, or even Super, whatever, Dragon Ball, I'm just going to say Dragon Ball as a whole. What you're wanting to see in Dragon Ball, and I'm not talking about the old series, I'm just as a whole, Yu Yu Hakusho, I think, does a really good job of at least giving a lot of the characters their own chance. And not to say that doesn't happen, like towards the end it kind of does what DBZ, or it kind of does the same thing as DBZ, where there's a little bit more of that gap issue. But for a good part of it, it was, a lot of the characters got a time to shine. And, and it felt like that early Dragon Ball, where these characters were getting stronger, but it wasn't too ridiculous to a certain extent. But they were having these adventures, the characters had stuff to play. And there was even one thing where, even after when they had a big bad tournament, they had this one thing where these characters' lives were on the line. Even though the characters, because of the magic aspect of it, even though the characters they were facing weren't like the most powerful badasses on the planet, they still had their lives were on the line because of the magical aspect of it, because of the spirit world and everything like that. So that's why I was like bringing up Yu Yu Hakusho, because I think that's something that may scratch that itch if you're one that anime with those type of dynamics, or would it be stakes? Yeah, stakes. Kind of like medium rare. So I think that would kind of like give you. I think Yu Yu Hakusho might fit that itch that maybe. I guess that Z didn't.
That's
feel
cool.
Kind of like and Super, because, and plus it's a fun show. It's really fun.
Yeah.
I think you'd like it. I mean, if you like, I don't know how much anime you watch, but I think you'd like it. It's a little bit older, but is it older? No, it's not older than Dragon Ball. I don't think so, at least.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I might check it out. Thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, no problem. But I just hope that I just really hope that Daima gives the whole cast a chance to like shine. If they pull any of that nonsense with Dragon Ball Z or Super, kind of done a little bit better. But if they pull any nonsense like DBZ did, where none of those characters got time to shine, I'm not gonna be liking it because it's just such a rich cast, and it's just like it just sucks they're not used.
I agree. It just feels like a shame to like introduce these characters, build them all up, and then put them on the sideline, you know?
Well, yeah. I don't know. It'd be like, okay, this is a good example. Let's say you have this amazing album, right? This the best album in the world, and then you only listen to like the same song on repeat, like the same one song on repeat all the time. You're like, what about all these other ones? You got all these other ones in the background. Why not this? Why are we on repeat on this one song? Not to say it's not bad or doesn't deserve maybe one or two repeats, but why all the time?
Yeah. Miles, are you there? What do you think about Dragon Ball? What are your favorite?
I haven't watched Dragon Ball in years.
Really?
Yeah.
Which one did you last watch? Was it Z?
It was the Frieza saga, like the very beginning.
Frieza saga. Are you aware that there was a show before Dragon Ball Z called Dragon Ball?
No, I had no idea.
Okay, so that's what we've been talking about for like the last 5 hours, basically.
Okay.
It's like they're very different in tone. Okay, so like the high level overview. Dragon Ball Z, you know what it's like. It's all about power. It's all about strength. It's all about reaching the next crazy level and crazy epic fights, right? But Dragon Ball Z is pretty much like, okay, there's the next big bad guy. Let's go fight him. Like, there's nothing really in between the big bad guys as far as plot goes. If it is, it's like filler episodes. But Dragon Ball, the original series, is very different. It's basically Goku is a kid for pretty much all of it, and he starts out like just being this kid raised by a grandpa in the woods. He has no friends, and over the course of like 8 or 9 seasons, he like travels the world. He meets all these crazy friends. They go on wild adventures. He doesn't have Super Saiyan, so he can't just like blast people away. Like, he really has to fight and learn martial arts techniques from different mentors and different people he fights with, and so like it's much more of an adventure. Like, the places that you see in Dragon Ball, it's so much more varied, and there's so many different people and different techniques that they use and different strategies they have to use to defeat these people, and it's basically an adventure comedy. It's honestly like not really the same tone as Dragon Ball Z. Like, you don't really feel, I'll put it this way, in Dragon Ball, yes, you know that these enemies are like super strong, but you don't really feel like the world is at risk. It's a lot more like it's a serious, deadly fight between Goku and this person, and they're both using crazy martial arts, and they're just really well choreographed battles, and then in between that they go on adventures and they have some funny stuff and whatnot. Dragon Ball Z, it's more personal and character development in the sense that like they're going on adventures and learning from each other. Dragon Ball Z, it's like, no, the world is always about to blow up. There's always some big next terrible person you have to fight.
Yeah, it's always like life or death, pretty much.
It's always life or death, and that helps for the tone of like, this is serious. You need to be a super big buff guy in this world. You need to reach the next level.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and a lot of other things we were talking about, like Dragon Ball Z, you wanted it to end at a certain point because you don't want him to just always face the next big bad guy. But Dragon Ball, the original series, when I got to the end of Dragon Ball, I felt I wanted more. I could have watched more of that. When I got to the end of Dragon Ball Z, when they fought Boo, I was kind of like, yeah, well, who else could they fight at this point? It's already just stronger person. So the difference is like, now that there's a new show in the Dragon Ball series called Dragon Ball Daima, and they're going back to the Dragon Ball style, it looks like, because they're taking Dragon Ball Super characters, which are adults, and they're turning them back into kids, and they're using there's the same fighting techniques and the same like fighting style and probably storytelling as Dragon Ball, that's made a lot of people in the Dragon Ball fan base very upset because they wanted to continue with like, no, I want to see Goku go past God level and fight more stronger people in the universe to fight. And they're doing a 180 and they're saying, no, we're going to go back to Dragon Ball now. And we're going to have probably reset Goku's power level to where he actually has to like learn new techniques and level up and he can't just blow someone away. Yeah. And a lot of people are upset about that. But what I'm saying, why I'm excited about that, is because that type of storytelling, I really enjoyed it and it was really fresh. And I feel that the path that they've been going down from Z of just find the next strongest person in the solar system, galaxy, universe, multiverse, like where do you go from there? I think they need to take a little break and kind of reintroduce,
like
revamp or just kind of like reset expectations a little bit, because part of what made Z so good is that it came after Dragon Ball. And if you see that transition, it's going back to its roots. And why is that a bad thing? And that's the question I have. Right?
I don't think so.
I would highly recommend you watch Dragon Ball, actually, Miles. If you're interested in Dragon Ball the series, I would recommend you watch Dragon Ball and then Dragon Ball Z. And you'll probably like them both. If you watch all of Dragon Ball, I think you'll like it. If you watch all of Dragon Ball Z, I think you'll like it. They're just different things, but they're both good in different ways, you know?
Yeah, like I said, it's been like since Tsunami days since I watched it. And then there was like, what is it? Like God, like Super Saiyan God or whatever,
That's more recent.
That's the recent stuff, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the last 5 years, I think. Yeah, that was like 5 years ago. Yeah, it's kind of... Because now they introduce this thing where there's multiverses, like there's other universes, and they introduce these gods and angels and stuff like that. So there might be like an opposing thing of demons and things like of that sort. But now that they're gonna have them turn into like pretty much the whole cast, like the main cast is gonna be turning into kids. I don't know, like I think the premise. I'm not sure all the ideas that are going into it, but a lot of people have been blasted because there was this one series called Dragon Ball GT where something similar happened where Goku got turned into a kid. So then he's traveling to these different planets with his granddaughter and teen Trunks, and they're basically instead of them traveling the globe to get the Dragon Balls, they're traveling to different planets to get the Dragon Balls. And so that was Dragon Ball GT. So a lot of people aren't liking it too, or at least blasting it because they feel like it's just like, oh, this is like GT 0.20 or something like that, or 2.0. And that's where some people are getting a lot of resistance with this newest one. But I'll tell you this, the animation looks fantastic, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with it. But if it's like, my biggest thing is I want the cast, at least everyone in the cast, to kind of like get a little bit of a chance to shine. Because if they do like how Dragon Ball Z ended, where it was just like just Super Saiyan 24/7, then I'm not gonna be like cool with that.
Yeah, that's a question for Anthony now that he's back. One point we were talking about, man, is that pretty much post Dragon Ball Z, it's pretty much been the Goku and Vegeta show. And so one of the good things about Dragon Ball, when I watched that show and why I felt like at the end of Dragon Ball I could keep watching it, is because all of the characters were pretty well balanced and they fought together and they battled together and won together. And I felt more attached to all of those characters for that reason. But at the end of Z and Super, I was really only interested in the main four still, which is Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, Trunks. Like as far as like who made the biggest impact and fought the actual villains that mattered. It was only those four people at the end of the day. Right. And so what could be really cool about Dragon Ball is you could start to get familiar with those other characters again, and they could get cool arcs, and it would be fun to watch all of them again, I think.
Right. I agree with you there, because it is a Vegeta and Goku show. That's it. Like, no one else is really relevant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you're just down to two characters to carry the show. So when you go to Dragon Ball or to even this new series, everyone's going to play a key part. You know, from Yamcha to Tien to Goku, Vegeta to even probably Bulma and Chi-Chi to even Hercule. Like, everyone's going to have a key part in it because they're all children, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what made Dragon Ball, or even, like, you know, part of early Dragon Ball Z interesting, because everyone contributed until you got to the Saiyan arcs or like Cell games, where it's like, yeah, you pretty much have to be a Super Saiyan 2 to 3 to keep up in the show. If not, you're kind of just a background character.
Yeah.
You know?
And for me, the Dragon Ball cast has been really fun to watch. And so I like that potentially they're taking those people out of the sidelines, because like, why would you create all of these great characters just to put them on the sideline? I think this is a good thing that they're trying to bring them more into the fold.
I think it's just like just anything. It's like even life, like either you progress or you don't. But at the same time, it's just an anime where you can't really, you know, dig too deep, because it's like you're talking about like a race of Saiyans, or monkeys, or gorillas that have evolved to a point where they're going to the domain of the gods. Like, humans will never be able to enter the domain of the gods, but you know, these fictional characters, they can enter that realm.
Well, I think it didn't help too when you were talking about. Well, I think I'm thinking of it even on the simpler terms of just popularity, where it's like when the whole Super Saiyan Goku got added, that was like like that was like the way that he transformed was like amazing. Where he just kind of like he was like he had the lightning strikes and stuff, and then he turned Super Saiyan. And he goes toe to toe with Frieza, and then it's like no other character. Now when I think about it. It's like no other, like outside of Piccolo really getting a transformation, we didn't really get a big, outside of the hero cast.
The only thing they'd be able to get is Kaioken.
That would have been cool.
That's the only thing they could get, because it's a technique. It's not a transformation.
Right.
That'd been cool to see them pull out Kaioken.
There's fictional manga that the fans have created where Tien, Yamcha, Chaozu, Krillin, they've learned the art of Kaioken because it's a multiplier.
Yeah.
And they're able to keep up with some major villains, or to get to, or even get to their power level at certain stages in the series.
Well, that was a question we had earlier, is could Krillin currently defeat any of the major villains from DBZ? And my point there was he doesn't have damage multipliers or states he can reach. So that would be one challenge.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So, in the episode of Super, when Goku and Krillin were going against like
the image training.
Yeah, the image training, and they ran into Cell and Frieza. Supposedly, I gotta look up where I read this source. Supposedly, Krillin could take on Namek Frieza.
Yeah, yep. And that was the only like point that I thought could justify it, because you've seen a lot of characters progress to a really high level by kind of removing their own self-doubt and really removing their own mental blocks and limitations. Gohan only defeated Cell because of that, right?
Here's one.
Yep.
You can go buy off the manga or the anime, Master Roshi in the Tournament of Power.
I guess you cut out.
Uh-oh.
Master Roshi in the Tournament of Power.
Well, yeah, because you have Master Roshi somewhat standing his own against Jiren in the manga, and then you have Master Roshi somewhat holding his own against Frost, and then that Birdman guy.
Yeah.
Frost was fighting Goku and Vegeta and Piccolo, and this was like post Battle of the Gods. Well, even Battle of F.
And look at what Master Roshi did before the Tournament of Power. He removed the distractions he's always had with like just being totally googly eyes over girls. And the point there is that if he really committed himself to fighting with 100% focus, then maybe he could reach a higher level. Just like if Krillin removed his fears 100%, maybe he could reach a higher level. Because Goku has always been 100% focused. He's never had any doubts about himself. And that's part of why he's excelled so fast. And Vegeta, when he finally like let go and started to just focus on being as strong as he could be after the Cell arc, he reached crazy levels as well and has gone crazy from there. So I could see that being a case where Krillin did the image training with Frieza and Cell and all of them, and he, for once and for all, defeated his fears and said, I'm just going to go ham. And then I could see him being at that level of like the DBZ top fighter level.
To kind of add credibility to what you're saying, it's kind of like where Frieza, after when he got killed after Resurrection F, he was in that cocoon, and he said all he had was time to like image train or focus or hone himself. And so he became a lot, when he got released from that cocoon, he was like way more powerful than he was in Resurrection F. So that's something that can kind of lend credibility to the whole thing of, you know, these characters where they train within themselves and they become way more powerful.
And you know what's funny? I will actually agree with image training because I did that for 9 months. And I came back better than ever with my, you know what. And I didn't, I mean, like, the mind is very powerful. Like, I mean, like people always say
100%.
It is very cliche and very cheesy, but if you can remove all distractions and really put yourself in a visual situation where you can foresee yourself in movements or doing something, it can actually happen. It's the weirdest, most surreal thing I've ever experienced. Because you're like, imagine yourself like, you know, at a skill, whatever it is. But for 9 months, you can, you know, imagine yourself perfecting or honing your skill. And then all of a sudden 9 months go by and you finally attempt your skill and somehow you're better.
Yeah.
That's it's surreal. It's a very surreal feeling, and it's hard to put into words and explain to people. Like, yeah, I didn't practice my skill for 9 months, but for 9 months I visualized myself training and I became better. And people are like, how's that possible? I'm like, you know what? You just have to do it, and you know, you have to do it yourself to be able to comprehend what I experienced. Because, you know, it's like me saying, like, hey, you can visualize yourself for 9 months not going to the gym and you're going to be stronger. Well, that doesn't make sense on paper. But depending on the skill, somehow it works. I don't. It just depends on what it is.
Right. Well, because it's removing things that are limiting your effectiveness. If you're 100% focused, you're not going to doubt yourself. You're not going to worry. You're just going to use 100% of your potential. And so just by using more of your potential, you will be stronger. You will be better at what it is that you're doing. Like, there's a quote that says, like, we use, like, 5% of our potential every day, or, like, 5% of our energy every day. And that's true. Like, what if you were to wake up for, like, 12 hours and just go as hard as you could at whatever you're doing, whether that's weightlifting or playing a sport or, you know, training for a new job or studying some new language. Like, that 12 hours, you would progress more than 2 weeks of just doing it willy-nilly, you know?
Right.